my close, it starts to end up on the brink. I tried so hard, but all these scars, they cut so deep, I bleed. I fell so fast from heaven, it's like someone clipped my wings. Now I'm falling, and I can't see the ground. Can we stop this gravity? It keeps bringing me down. I can't breathe, and I don't wanna die. Can we stop this gravity? 'Cause I don't wanna say goodbye. I forgive the pain you gave to me so long ago. Sleepless nights I laid awake just begging to let go. I almost got to suicidal thoughts, but you stepped in. An angel sent from heaven showed me how to live again. Now I'm falling, and I can't see the ground. Can we stop this gravity? It keeps bringing me down. I can't breathe, and I don't wanna die. Can we stop this gravity? 'Cause I don't wanna say goodbye. My love, I'm gone, I need to be strong. The darkness, it tried to swallow me. Some days I fall, but I hear your call. I pray I don't hit the ground. Gravity. 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 Gravity.
Baby, wait, I know that you're afraid, but it'll be okay if you just stay with me. We can run from here and we can disappear, and they won't find us where we are going, dear. So baby, hold on to me, 'cause I know I can make you believe in something that only we can see. Oh, so baby, hold on to me, hold on to me.
Are hot. Switch it over. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I have an awesome show for you today. Adam Breneman joins the show to discuss a little bit about Mercury, NIL, and what he saw of the Penn State football camp this fall. Then we'll get into the whole season preview. Going to be talking a lot about every position, the schedule, breakdown, everything. We're talking it all tonight. Can't wait to get into it, everybody. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Sean Kane. And also a special guest, Adam Breneman. How you doing today, Adam?
I'm great. I'm excited to be on here. Excited to talk some Penn State football, and as I'm sure we'll talk about, excited to have you guys as part of our state media network at Penn State. So I'm fired up, guys.
Thanks, us too.
Yeah, thanks for being here. You know, when you first came to us and you offered this idea to us, we were a little skeptical, but I think we've been nothing but excited since then. So a pleasure is all ours. We're looking forward to what's to come. What exactly is Mercury for people that aren't familiar? What is Mercury and what's like the plan with Penn State moving forward?
Yeah, so at a high level, Mercury is, you can think of it as a college sports media production and fan experience company. So we get compared a lot to a company like Barstool or The Volume or basically media content networks like that. The difference with us is that our differentiator is the fact that we actually partner directly with colleges and universities and the NIL collectives at those schools. So again, imagine a Barstool Sports that just has partnerships directly at Penn State with Penn State sports properties, is able to use all the venues at Penn State, use the Penn State logo, and also has a deal with the NIL collective to help raise money for the players at Penn State. So that's our differentiator. We work with a handful of universities, Penn State being our biggest and most important one now. And at these schools, we spin up a sub content network under our Mercury umbrella at each school we work with. So at Penn State Media, we'll have a host of shows like this one, Hardcore PSU. We'll have a show with Christian Hackenberg coming out soon. We have a show with some of the players coming out. And we're also able to funnel some of the players through our NIL deals, through the different content, through the different shows. You guys will get some players. So there's a lot of cool things happening. And on top of that, the experiences, the actual events we're able to put on for fans, giving them a behind-the-scenes, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And again, part of the money that funnels through for those experiences goes directly back to the NIL collective, Happy Valley United at Penn State. So for us, it's just kind of being the first ones to play in the middle. Again, it's a complicated world, right? You're talking about the athletic department. You're talking about Penn State sports properties. You're talking about NIL. You're talking about former players. You're talking about current players. You're talking about fans. Like, there's a lot going on. We are really the first ones from a media content event perspective to live in the middle of it all. So that's our goal, and we're going to keep growing it at Penn State and produce some really good content and execute on it and bring some good events. And at the end of the day, all of our shows just have to keep growing our following and keep growing the quality of content we're putting out.
Yeah, that's great. Can you tell us a little bit about the NIL drive that you started during? I think it was Monday. Did you start that over the weekend?
Yeah, I think it might have been Sunday. Yeah. So, I mean, you guys know Penn State's a special place for me. It's important to me. I have a great relationship with Coach Franklin, and I've gotten to know a lot of the people running Happy Valley United and the NIL collectives at Penn State. And really, as I talked to them, we were thinking of ways that I could get involved, and aside from the Mercury relationship as being more than just that. And one of the ideas we had is that in the NIL world at Penn State, so much money at a lot of schools comes from the big donors, right? It comes from the $100,000 check from this guy, or West Shore Home and BJ Worgen donate $1 million. And there's all these big checks, but there really hasn't been a great education or opportunity for the everyday fan who works the regular 9 to 5 to contribute in some capacity to Penn State's NIL efforts. So we launched the Race to 107 in an effort to raise $107,000. That's great. That's a big chunk of money. That will go a long way for what Penn State football needs. But more importantly is the opportunity to get 1,000 plus Penn State fans donating $50, $100 to this cause, and activating the community around it, educating the community around it, and also having the database of all these donors that maybe we can invite in the future to an event, that maybe we can invite to something else. It's all a grassroots effort. And that was the exciting part for me, was to kind of grow that message as a guy who has built a following around Penn State fans, was to kind of use that to try to help the NIL program at Penn State. And it's been really, really cool. I mean, I think we just hit $30,000 in donations. I mean, these are small dollar donations. These are $50, $75 from fans. That's a lot of money, $30,000 in a few days. We just secured a $25,000 match sponsor. So assuming we keep on the track we'll have another 25,000, and we'll be on our way to hitting our goal of 107,000. And really, more than anything, educating the Penn State community about the importance of NIL and where we are realistically in the NIL race compared to an Ohio State and compared to a Michigan.
Yeah, I saw the matching of up to 25,000. That's a huge deal as far as getting to that 107,000 mark. Let's talk about this season a little bit. You were just at Penn State. You just did a host of interviews with Drew Aller again, as well as Coach Yurcich, Coach Diaz. What did you take away from your visit? I know you didn't necessarily get to see a bunch of practice this time, but you sat down with the two coordinators. What did you get out of this visit?
Yeah, I mean, I've been around that program a lot over the last 10 years or so since I've been there. I mean, there is as much excitement and confidence. More importantly, there's as much intensity as I can ever remember around that program. There's a certain level of confidence that everyone's walking around with right now. I think they know that they're good. I think they know the roster is really good. I think that they feel there's confidence, and there's a sense of familiarity with Mike Yurcich and Manny Diaz coming back for another season. I mean, again, I think Manny Diaz coming back is one of the biggest wins in the Big Ten this offseason, retaining him for another year. So talking to those coordinators, everyone just feels comfortable and like they're on a singular mission, and everyone's singing the song to the same tune. And it's been fun to see. I've now interviewed Drew Aller 2 times, and I got to know Drew over the course of this year. It's been cool to see his growth, his development, even from an interview standpoint of how he's grown and how he's answering questions and how he's handling the media, and how, like, just even in the 3 months between our 2 interviews, I think he's grown a lot, and I'm excited to see him take the reins. And I have no doubt it's going to be a good season for Drew and for Penn State football, and they have all the pieces in place to make a run at the whole thing.
Shawn, do you have a question for Adam about what he saw in this past week or so?
Yeah, is there anybody, like, I feel like the question Cory and I get asked often is what under the radar guys we expect to step up this year. From what you've seen, who do you think stands out to you as an under the radar guy?
Yeah, I'll give you a few guys. Number one, this guy's not under the radar by any means, but I do think that he's not getting quite enough respect nationally as to how good I think he will be this year, and that's Theo Johnson at tight end. I think Theo's got a serious chance to be one of the best in the country at tight end.
You're not biased at all, are you?
I think you're right. I think he's a serious Mackey Award contender. I think the way they're going to use him in this offense, it's funny talking to Drew. I think I asked him about the receivers, and the first person he mentioned was Theo, a tight end. And from what I've seen, they're going to use him all over the field. And he has that ability. He looks really, really lean and athletic, and just looks like he's ready to have a really big season. So I think Theo's a guy who's going to play really well. Everything I've seen around the receiver room, I think for a long time, not for a year or two at Penn State, the question around Keandre Lambert-Smith has been somewhat of not the skills side of the game, not the speed. It's been everything else, right? It's been the mental part, reading the coverages, showing up. It's been everything outside of it. And from what I've seen, Keandre seems to have completely flipped the switch and has shown up every day with an intention at training camp, with the desire to get better, the desire to learn. And you can see him kind of becoming a leader in that room, which has been really cool. And then I think too, I mean, I asked a lot of guys about some of the players on that, on some of the skill position players, and everyone talks about Singleton and Kane Allen, who are obviously both special players and can compete with any running back room in the country. But Trey Potts is a guy that I think we'll see some here and there, especially as we get through Big Ten play. He looks the part. I mean, the guy looks like an NFL running back, and he's a smart dude, has learned the system really quickly, and I think has earned a lot of people's respect. I've heard his name come up multiple times talking to the offensive players. So on the defensive side, the one guy that everyone keeps telling me about, my biggest question mark on the defense has been there's a lot of turnovers and a lot of big plays that are hanging out in the NFL right now. You lose Joey Porter to the league, who's a first-round pick or should have been a first-round pick, however you look at the 32nd pick of the draft. And you have an All-American at Kalen King at corner. So who's going to play? Who's going to be that second guy that can step into that role and play physical, can play man-to-man, can play press, and has the physicality and the ball skills to play that position they want it played. And to be honest, going into the year, I had some questions about whether Johnny Dixon was that guy. And I think from what I've heard and what I've seen, he's erased all the doubt. And I believe that he's going to have a great season opposite Kalen King and will be the guy that you don't need to, that you can use to your advantage. You don't need to make calls in spite of him. You don't need to work around him as a weak link at corner. You have two really good lockdown corners in Kalen King and Johnny Dixon, and you let your edge rushers go to work.
Yeah, I think we're pretty excited about some of those guys you mentioned. We're definitely going to talk about some of those guys a lot more throughout the show tonight. Adam, I'll let you get out of here on one final question. I've seen a couple of times now you've asked some Penn State players what their favorite core value is. I want to flip that back on you. What's your favorite Penn State core value?
Wow, I love that you did that. That's great. It's funny, man. Those core values just get ingrained in your mind when you play for James Franklin. I mean, I remember the first couple of team meetings I was in, what Coach Franklin does is at every meeting, he starts the meeting off and he calls on someone, and you stand up in front of the team and you recite the 4 core values. And the whole time you're just praying that you don't get picked, right? So it's funny because they're also up on the wall. So like if you need help, you just look at them. But honestly, by the time you hear them 4 times, you never forget them again. The other things he does is he asks people to recite their ultimate teammate, and you have to pick someone on the team who your ultimate teammate is and why in front of the whole team. But little insight there into a team meeting. But my favorite core value, because I think it's applied throughout my career. I remember when I was playing for Coach Franklin in 2014, 2015, I was hurt for 2 seasons, barely played for him, was coming off my big freshman year, and then it was downhill. Coach Franklin always said to me that the best way I can bring value to the team when I'm hurt is positive attitude, by being the guy who's always positive all the time. And I really feel like aside from everything else, right, no matter what's going on, no matter how hard you work, no matter the competition level, if you can just stay positive throughout everything you're going through, it always gets better, and you can have a drastic impact on other people. It's a truly contagious effect. And I think some of the guys I asked on the team about it said the same thing. I forget who it was. I think it might have been Kane Allen or one of them that said they used to be compete. And then their mindset has now changed to the most important one's positive attitude, because of how contagious that is, how it can affect your entire day, your attitude, your work ethic, but it can also affect everyone else around you. So I would say positive attitude is my favorite one. I think it's the reason it's number one. I think Coach Franklin believes it's one of the most important as well, because it truly has a huge impact. And for everyone who doesn't know, the 4 core values: positive attitude, great work ethic, compete in everything you do, and must be willing to sacrifice. Man, those I should get those tattooed on my wrist or something. Tattooed on my bicep.
Yeah,
you probably felt like they were.
Yeah, no, they haven't. Yeah, I don't even need a tattoo because I know them so well. I'll recite them forever.
Wouldn't be a bad idea for a freshman, though, to get those tattooed somewhere they can just little peek down every once in a while if you need to see them.
Go look at it.
Hey, Adam, we appreciate your time with us tonight. What's next? Just curious of the Next Up podcast. Where are you heading to? What should people expect from you? I guess the next week or so.
Yeah, I'm flying tomorrow morning. So it's Wednesday at 7:20 right now. And my flight takes off at 6:50 a.m. tomorrow from Philadelphia to Houston to do a podcast with RG3, Robert Griffin III, and then I'll be flying right back here right after to enjoy the weekend, and then season starts, man. I mean, it'll be more and more podcasts. I'll be calling some games on the fall. My first game is I'm calling Akron Temple on ESPN to start the season.
Action.
Yep.
Yeah, on September 2nd. Billy Fessler is the offensive coordinator. He's one of my buddies from college, so I know that offense pretty well. That'll be an easy one for me to call. I'll be Tony Romo predicting the plays up there. So I'm excited. It'll be a fun fall, and really, guys, I'm excited for your show during the fall. I think there's very few places that Penn State fans can get the kind of content and the expertise and the analysis that you guys provide. It's the reason I wanted to work with you, from the film breakdown to the way you guys know the team and the program. It's impressive, and I think it's only going to get better and better, and I'm excited to see what you guys do with this thing this fall.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Appreciate that a lot.
Appreciate it, guys. That was fun.
Thank you, Adam. You can hang up and you will be all good. Oh, there it goes.
A lot of times you got to wait for people.
I know. Usually that's the case.
It's the awkward, 6 seconds.
Alrighty. Adam Breneman. Shawn, do you have any thoughts there before we move on to the rest of the show?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about Mercury last week. Talked some about it this week. And, we're just really excited to have the opportunity to work with AB. We could tell them who's coming out next week, right?
Let's not, because I haven't confirmed it yet.
Okay. So we'll hold off on that. Good thing I asked. But yeah, we're really excited to work with them. And AB, he has so much going on. He's going to be calling games too, which is awesome. So, yeah, it's really, really cool. And are you ready to preview the squad? Well, we do NFL first.
I had a couple, I was just so everyone knows kind of plan. We're going to quickly mention a 2026 commit that Penn State just picked up.
Right.
We're going to run through the Penn State players that did well in the preseason last week and week 2. And then we're going to get into the depth chart breakdown. If you guys weren't here last year, I don't want to say we talked about every player because that's probably not true, but we talked probably at least 2 or 3 deep, and we're doing that tonight. That's why we started an hour early, because we're going to go pretty long tonight. And just so you know, if you're listening on podcast, you're allowed to pause it, do something, and come back and watch the rest. We will still be here whenever you can get to the rest of it. But as we do the depth chart breakdown, we are actually going to be assigning a pizza or a pizza topping to that position. Remember last year we did wing sauces. We're trying to make you hungry yet again, and we're going to go with pizzas. We'll talk about the schedule. If you haven't listened to our previous episodes, we have broken down every single team in depth already this year. But we'll give a little bit of a nugget about each of those once again. Then we'll wrap it up with some bold predictions. Shawn, I have 2 or 3 written down. And then we'll get to the Twitter poll results, and then we'll wrap it up with the season predictions. Sound like a plan?
I'm ready. This was one of my favorite shows last season, so I'm sure it'll be one of my faves this year as well.
Should just have like a little snack thing, a little bowl over here. I can snack on throughout it. It's gonna be a juicy show.
Cory, quick.
Yeah.
Do you call Sloppy Joes Wimpies?
Wimpies?
Wimpies. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not heard that at all.
So I had some right before I came out here. So.
Do you put bell peppers in your sloppy joe? Yeah, I do too.
Way too many in tonight, though.
No, you can't put too many in there.
Yeah,
for those that are watching on YouTube, just why don't you say hi? Maybe where you're listening from. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video and subscribe to State Media. All of the podcasts that Adam was mentioning, I know they broke the news that Christian Hackenberg and Brandon Bell will have a show. There will be a player show. We've heard whisperings of who will be on that, but I'm not sure if that's solidified yet. But all of those podcasts will live on this same exact YouTube channel. So you don't have to go anywhere. Make sure you're subscribed. I love a good sloppy joe. Sean, I don't want to go down the recruiting rabbit hole today. We have a lot to discuss. But Penn State did pick up a new commitment in Messiah Mickens, a 2026 athlete, a.k.a. running back. Very, very good. I mean, it's early, right? I mean, 2026, I can't even really count how many months away that is. But Penn State picked up a pretty big commit. A commit that maybe usually James Franklin would probably maybe try to talk the recruit out of, being that it's so early. But nonetheless, he's committed to Penn State.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing when you look at his highlights, the speed, he is just running at just a higher level than everybody else on that field. And, I think that speed is real. He's got that Bama offer. So he has several big-time offers at Penn State. And, I kind of thought when he committed, a lot like Cooper Cousins in a way. Now, obviously, Cooper Cousins is a lineman, but he has potential to be a leader in the 2026 class. So, again, we're not going to talk about the 2026 class a whole lot in the next year and a half. And then we'll start getting into that. But I think that's an excellent start. He's a guy that Penn State really needed to have from their own backyard, and they were able to reel him in.
Yeah, absolutely. Penn State running back room, people are already talking about next year and the running back room they're going to have with some of the 2024 commits, but already kind of seeing that running back is not an issue for this Penn State recruiting staff to recruit. They have continued to line them up, whether that's because of Saquon Barkley or Miles Sanders or what Journey Brown was able to do, and then obviously what Nick Singleton and Katron Allen did as freshmen, not really having any issue recruiting running back. So no surprise there. Sean, Penn State in the preseason, NFL Week 2 preseason. Not necessarily the most important week. I would say that's probably this upcoming weekend. That's really the chance, the last chance before cuts happen to make an impact. But nonetheless, some pretty big things came out of the first one I wanted to mention. Pro Football Focus, highest graded tight end so far this preseason. Your very own Brenton Strange. I'm guessing that has to do with his blocking ability. He's blocked really well so far for the Jaguars this year. Sean, you're also probably not very surprised by that.
No, as anybody who's listened to us for a little while now knows, Brent Strange, we both thought this guy's going to work in the NFL. Jacksonville had a huge need at tight end, and that's a lot. That's why they picked him so high in the second round. He was picked a little higher than I certainly thought he'd be. Another guy I want to highlight is Juice Scruggs. He started for the Houston Texans this last week. Their center is nursing an injury, and he did a pretty nice job against my Dolphins. Houston ended up getting blown out in the game, but he held his own. And Joey Porter Jr. got that interception. It was the easiest interception known to man, but nonetheless, he came down with it. So nice start for his preseason as he didn't play in the first game.
Sean, what else you got?
It was the Cliff McSorley Bowl up in New England. Cliff played pretty well. What else we got? Yeah, and then you went over the Brent Strange news. That's about all I got for PSU in the NFL, to be honest with you.
Parker Washington touchdown.
Oh, was that this week?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, Parker scored a touchdown. So that's 2 straight weeks that he's made an impact. And he's one of those guys that I think is just going to be able to find his way onto the field. Obviously not the biggest guy in the world, not the fastest guy in the world, but he knows how to run routes and he has good hands. So he has a knack for making tough catches. So that's going to keep him in this league for a while.
Yeah, the only other thing I really wanted to mention was Jonathan Sutherland. 7 tackles. He also had the hurry that led to an interception. I mean, he's continued to be a tackling machine out there in Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that could find his way onto a roster just from a special teams perspective. We know his limitations on defense. Penn State fans are aware of that, but nobody's going to question his ability on special teams. I believe he played special teams from almost the minute he got to Penn State. So that's just kind of what he does. Also, Jordan Stout's been kicking the ball very, very well. So, again, that's not a surprise. Jordan Stout is a stud. And that's what he does. I want to also mention, Corey, I don't think we've talked about this. Robbie Gould still doesn't have a home. So
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah.
I thought he was still with the 49ers, or that was who he was with the last?
They picked up Michigan's kicker.
Oh, Moody.
Jake Moody. Yep. Yeah, so they
Did not know that.
Or I don't know if they cut him or not. I don't think they cut him, but they let his contract expire. And I mean, Robbie Gould is 100 years old, so I do kind of get it. But the guy is still money. And there are a lot of mediocre to bad kickers in the NFL, so I don't think he's going to stay unsigned for long.
No. The only other thing I was going to mention, Juice Scruggs had a nice pancake block.
Yep.
After not necessarily after the whistle, but he played right to the whistle. And then I was going to mention Mitch Tinsley has done a lot of good things in practice. I don't think he necessarily showed out during the last game, but right now they have him as like potentially the 6th wide receiver. So he's kind of right on the fence for potentially being kept. And Terry McLaurin just had like a sprained toe. So they're not sure if he's going to be ready for the first game.
Oh, yeah, Dotson had a nice game.
Yeah.
Right.
Dotson had 76 yards, I think.
Yeah.
So he's had 2 nice games. So I'm curious to see if they keep Mitch Tinsley or not. I'm gonna go on and bet that they do end up keeping him. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But more news to come. This is a big week for some Penn State players. Again, week 3 is kind of the biggest opportunity. Usually the backups play a bunch. And again, this is the last week before the cuts start happening. So,
yeah. So you're gonna see some guys, maybe lose a job here and there, but maybe a guy like Robbie Gould gets signed. Did you see anything about Tig Brown?
No, I didn't.
I
I think
didn't
he
either.
had like 2 or 3 tackles. I looked up his box score. I think he had like 2 or 3 more tackles, but nothing crazy to report there.
Yeah.
Are
So,
you ready to talk Penn State football?
Beaver Stadium, are you ready for Penn State football?
I don't remember who went first last year.
That's way too far back for me, man.
How about I'm gonna start? How about that?
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna take it from you.
You can have it.
Oops. There we go. So let's begin with the quarterbacks. I say quarterbacks because I don't plan on just talking about Drew Aller, but of course we should probably start there. So my pizza topping for the quarterbacks is a stuffed pizza. Have you ever had a stuffed pizza before, Sean? Like a Chicago style stuffed pizza?
Yes. Yeah, I've never been in Chicago, but we used to have, now I don't think it really counts because it's a chain. We used to have an Uno here. And Uno Chicago is pretty good pizza. Have you ever had a white pizza?
Yes. It's kind of like that.
Okay. Yeah. When you
can do whatever you want with that, right? White pizza usually has onions on it too when it's stuffed like that. But there's now white pizzas that are a little bit different.
Yep.
The only reason I ask is because to me the quarterback situation is just like a stuffed pizza, because you're not when you order one, you're not really sure how long it's going to take, right? You don't really know how long it's going to be in the oven before you get to eat. And in my opinion, that's kind of what we had with Drew Aller, right? He's in the oven, he's cooking. We don't really know when we're going to be able to pull it out and enjoy it. And this whole season, I think, is going to be when do they let Drew Aller loose, right? When do they let him sling the rock? Is that stuff pizza going to come out in the first game? Is it going to come out in the Illinois game? Is it going to have to wait all the way until Ohio State? I don't know. At some point, though, it's going to be time to eat. and that pizza better be ready. So to me, the quarterbacks, Drew Aller, perfect indication of that. Very curious to see what the game plan is. We think they're going to run the rock, but as far as the passing game specifically, what is the game plan? Is it going to be the same as it was with Sean Clifford? Is it going to be single read progressions, just easy, simple decisions? And then how often is he going to throw the ball deep? I think that's what everybody wants to know. How much is he going to take the deep shot? And more importantly, who's going to be on the receiving end of that deep shot? Adam Breneman was just on the show and mentioned Theo Johnson and what his role that, I think about that Minnesota game and how Ty Warren and Theo Johnson were open across the middle like almost all the time. Is it going to be like that? Or is it going to be like the Trey Wallace catch in the Michigan game or what Keandre Lambert-Smith did towards the end of the season? I'm just curious to see what plays to Drew Aller's strengths and how much they let him loose. Behind him, I'm curious about Bo Prabila. Is Bo Prabila going to be prepared enough to come in and do enough? And obviously, the worst thing you can think about is that Iowa game 2021. I think we're already past that point with Bo Prabila, but we haven't seen him play. So where is he at in his maturation? And that's going to play a huge role in. And I'm not saying it if Drew Aller, let's just say there's an incident like with Sean Clifford. Let's just say Drew Aller has to go back to the locker room for 2 series. Can Bo Prabila come in and move the sticks? Not often, just enough to keep the offense kind of plugging along. It's not like he doesn't have a bunch of weapons behind him. So that I'm very curious there. And then we just had the practice notes with James Franklin. He highlighted Jackson Smolik again. Smolik's come a long way since the spring. We told you guys this before. Throw out what you saw in the blue and white game. Jackson Smolik has really grown up in the last 4 or 5 months. So very excited about these quarterbacks, but I don't know when we're going to pull that pizza out and when we're going to get to enjoy it, Sean.
Yeah, I like what you did there with the pizza. Yeah. Do you think the backup quarterback competition is settled? Does it exist?
It's funny that you bring this up, right? I don't know if there's a competition.
Okay.
I don't know. It's hard for me to sit here and say if there's a competition. I don't think there's a competition as of right now, Sean.
So it's Smolik.
No,
I'm just kidding. All right. Yeah. I definitely like the pizza pick. And I think you highlighted a lot of good points there. So about how is Aller gonna look out of the box, and that means like West Virginia, hell, even Delaware. And then when we're going to need him, Illinois, Iowa, we're probably going to need him at some point in one or both of those games. So I think that's a good way to put it. All right. You guys ready for running backs?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So for running backs, I chose pepperoni pizza. So pepperoni pizza, if you have a good...
Sorry, can you just say that again real quick?
Pepperoni pizza. So
thanks. Just start that over for me one more time.
Oh yeah. So for the running backs, I picked pepperoni pizza. So you ever have just a great piece of pepperoni pizza just on a, it's greasy and fallen, and there's that New York style where there's some flop, or if you're around here in the 570, we sometimes have a square pizza, some Old Forge style pizza, which is a bit overrated. But just think of the best pepperoni pizza you could think of. And that's kind of what I think of with this running back room. It's just consistent excellence with the first 2 guys. And then we have probably we might have the best trio of running backs in the country. So Nick Singleton, everybody knows about him. He is probably outside of Drew Aller, maybe even more so, the biggest household name on this Penn State football team. Just his ability to take it to the house. I think he could be even faster this year. He's gotten stronger in the weight room. He had over 1,000 yards as a freshman. And then you go to Kaytron Allen, who Cory and I both thought last year was the more consistent back of the two of them. And through long stretches of the year, Kaytron Allen was a better back than Nick Singleton. Now Singleton, he hit a bit of a freshman wall, but then he got up off the mat and finished really, really strong. We all know how he played in the Rose Bowl, and he was playing well. And he was playing well going into it as well. So, I mean, I'm expecting. I know we talked about this on a previous pod. I think they could get 30 touchdowns between the two of them this year. I think they're that dynamic. And they both might rush for over 1,000 yards, but they damn near did it last year. Kaytron was only 133 yards away. And then we go on to Trey Potts. And Trey Potts, probably either him or Cephas, biggest transfer portal additions on this team. He had almost 500 yards last year. He was playing back in a backup role behind Mo Ibrahim. And he does a lot. I'm curious to see how they're going to handle him and Kaytron. Because him and Kaytron do a lot of the same things. So I'm curious how they're going to do that. But I think he's going to play a lot. Because you hear just everybody talk about Trey Potts is underrated. People aren't talking about Trey Potts enough. We just heard AB talk about Trey Potts and how he's flying under the radar. So those are the top three guys. And then how much do we see of Cam Wallace and how much do we see of London Montgomery? London's coming off that ACL tear, but supposedly he had a nice practice during the open practice. That's really the first anybody's seen of him outside of the team. But he impressed. And Cam Wallace, he can't teach speed. So if you could run and you could catch, which he could do, you might be able to find the field. Now, I doubt either of them redshirt, or I doubt either of them burn their red shirts, but I think they could. I think they're both going to play, maybe against the Delaware, maybe against UMass, against an Indiana, Northwestern, and you might see some pretty cool moments from them. So, 1 through 5, I love this running back room. Absolutely love it.
I really like the Trey Potts edition. I really think, especially in the passing game, he's going to help out a bunch. You mentioned the running backs, and did a fantastic a really good job, Sean, if I can say so myself. Nick Singleton wants to improve his ability to catch passes, and so I'll be curious to see how much he improves there. Very excited to see what Cam Wallace does as well. And I think it's important to make people well aware too at the beginning of this kind of dissection, if you will, that we now have the ability, freshmen have the ability to play in 4 games plus the bowl game now. So not just 4 games, but 4 games plus the bowl game. And that makes a big difference. And so now they have basically a 5th game to play, as well as not having to worry about maybe losing some of that depth. So you're going to get to see these guys play a lot more. So I'm excited to see kind of where these guys are at. Obviously, the top 2, Singleton, I want to see if he improves his hands and catching ability, and then Kaytron Allen, I want to see whether or not his top end speed improves, which I think we both think it will. So, are we ready to move on to a wide receiver?
Yeah, those were actually very good points. Yeah.
And just for transparency, Sean, I had pepperoni for the running backs as well.
How about that? Great minds think alike. Yep, go ahead, buddy.
Okay, this one, as far as graphics go, was by far the hardest one to include or not include. And as you guys saw, we've been doing, if you're watching on YouTube, you've seen us do starters, you've seen us do depth, and then on some of these we've had incoming. but it was so hard to really differentiate even the starters and really differentiate the depth as well as the incoming players. So you just got starters and you just got depth. And even the starters could probably be argued quite a bit. I think we all agree Keandre Lambert-Smith and Trey Wallace are probably your 1-2 right now. But I think there'd be some people that would argue that Amari Evans and Dante Cephas are probably closer than what that depth line is separating right now. So I'm not going to argue with you. That's totally fair. You can make that argument. That's fine. I should really mention that most of the time, this isn't really in order, although it kind of is in order this time, although I'm not really sure where Malik McClain falls in. But I'm going to go down the list, Sean. Keandre Lambert-Smith. Adam Breneman spoke about it a little bit just a second ago, but the consistency. Can you be consistent and can you be a true number one? And honestly, I don't think you even have to be a true number one. I don't think you have to have a Devontae Smith type season. I just think you need to do enough to attract enough attention where teams have to scheme for you and prepare for you. And if he does what he did at the end of last year, they'll be fine, right? They'll be fine. But I think that Purdue game is a perfect example of what we're talking about as far as the consistency. Had a couple of drops, but he also had that fantastic touchdown, especially yards after the catch. So I just think it's a consistency thing with Keandre Lambert-Smith. I think we've already heard reports in camp that he's stepped up and done a good job as far as being a leader. So I'm excited for Keandre Lambert-Smith. He's been with the program for a while. It's time, as the other guys would say, it's time to, he's a peacock. You got to let him fly. So we'll see there. Trey Wallace. The size is there. We saw him, again, have that couple nice catches. I think he still lacks a little bit of consistency as far as getting open. But again, it's time. Shout out to, I believe he's from Pike Road, Alabama, just down the road from Auburn. So shout out to them. Not too far from where I was living when I was in Alabama. But it's time for him to step up, right? I mean, he could be a huge threat as far as a big-bodied receiver that would help Drew Aller. It's time for him to kind of step up and be that guy. And then, Sean, my favorite wide receiver, Omari Evans. I really don't think last year was an anomaly. I think last year was honestly just the tip of the iceberg. I say that because we're hearing great things. He put on some weight this offseason. And just a friendly reminder, he played quarterback in high school. And he came in and did what he did as a freshman without playing wide receiver very much. So I'm very excited to see what Omari Evans does. I think he's got that dog in him. And I think he's going to play a lot of football this year. And it didn't look like he slowed down very much, even in the blue and white game. So very excited about those guys, Sean. Before I get to the depth, is there things that you would like to add to what I've said so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think we both share our love of Omari Evans. I'm not 100% sure he starts this season, but I do think for sure he starts next season. And again, just seeing him in a more polished, be more polished this season, I think is super exciting. And no matter if he starts or he's the first guy off the bench, he's going to play a lot. You're going to see a lot of him. And yeah, I'm right with you with KLS, just being that consistent guy day in, day out. Franklin always talks about how he likes guys that are steady Eddie. And that's always been the thing with him. And I said last year, and Parker was here, and Mitch Tinsley was here. KLS is the most talented receiver in that room. He was last year, and he is this year. So if he is able to just piece it all together, he's going to be special. And I don't say that lightly. And I hear you on Trey Wallace. Big body. We know he has ability. Another guy that we've heard a lot about in the spring, and we continue to hear about into the summer. And he had a nice season last year. And I think I don't know. I feel like I need to talk about him more than I do. So the thing that actually stood out to me when I was looking at the receivers, the yards per catch, KLS 16.2 yards per catch. Omari Evans, I'm just going through your starters here. He has 11 yards per catch, and Harrison Wallace had 14.4 yards per catch. So they do a lot with the ball when they get the ball in their hands. So I just wanted to highlight that a little bit.
I'm always for you highlighting things, Sean. Let's get to that depth, right? Dante Sivas coming from Kent State, caught over 80 passes last year. What's that transition going to be like for him? He played against some really good teams and corners when he's at Kent State. But what's that transition going to be like to the Big Ten? How quickly can he learn the offense? I think that's maybe what some people are thinking, why he hasn't cracked maybe, as far up the depth chart yet as we were hoping. But can he be a guy that can break man coverage and do damage over the middle? Because I think that's really where he can be dangerous as far as crossing routes, finding the zone, sitting in the zone, slant routes, etc. Malik McClain, Florida State, former transfer, big-bodied receiver. We haven't heard maybe as much. We heard a little bit, maybe like a week and a half ago. But where's he at in his development? Where's he at in his learning? He would be an awesome red zone threat. You're talking about, I just watched the Michigan game yesterday and we threw a fade route in the red zone to Parker Washington and a fade route in the end zone to Mitch Tinsley. I feel much better about throwing those to Trey Wallace and Malik McClain moving forward. So we'll see what they can do there. And then, of course, Penn State's very own McConkey, Liam Clifford, the technician. We think he has a solid rapport with Drew Aller. What is his workload going to be like? We know he's a great route runner. Can he get open enough? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of white wide receiver comparisons. I'm just curious to see where the depth chart shakes out and where he is on it when it's all said and done. Because in my opinion, no offense to Liam Clifford, but I think Caden Saunders has more upside. And so Caden Saunders was the best wide receiver according to scouting. Well, I have him last down there, but I really think he could end up playing a lot of football. Also has a pretty good rapport with Drew Aller.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just touch on that a little bit because that was the first thing I was thinking. And something that stood out to me last season, and then again in the blue-white game, the kids that Aller came in with, Omari Evans, Caden Saunders, you could just see that rapport, and you could tell they play catch a lot, and they run a lot of routes together. Same thing with Liam Clifford. Like, you could tell that they got a lot of good work in last year, and they did in the spring, and I mean, of course, they did in the summer. So I think keeping your quarterback comfortable, your first-year quarterback comfortable, that's key. Football is a pretty simple game in that if you keep your quarterback comfortable and you keep the other team's quarterback uncomfortable, you're going to win a lot of football games. Might not win every one, but you're going to win a lot. And that's why I think you're going to see a lot more Caden Saunders than you did last year. You're going to see a lot of Liam Clifford. And then I think Malik McClain's going to have a role in this team. Last year at Florida State, his stats actually looked a lot like Trey Wallace's. They both had Wallace had 1 touchdown, McClain had 3. Wallace only had 2 more catches than Malik McClain, and Wallace did have 70 more yards. So I could see him having a role in this offense. So you have 7 guys there, and the key is finding, 4 guys that you really want 4 or 5 guys that you could trust in crunch time.
Yeah, I just saw too that Keandre Lambert-Smith and Drew Aller were the touchdown kings from this summer camp officially. So if anyone was curious on that, Keandre Lambert-Smith and Drew Aller were the touchdown kings. So good stuff there. And I think we're ready to move on to I don't think I dropped the pizza for these guys, did I?
Oh, you didn't? So. Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, I have Supreme for them because okay. I think that depending on where you are at, the Supreme could be a little bit different. And also, I think there's good and bad things about a Supreme pizza, right? Not everybody loves everything on a Supreme pizza. I think the wide receiver room, there's going to be things that we probably end up nitpicking a little bit. There's going to be things that we probably wish could be a little bit better, whether that's route running, whether that's dropping a couple passes, whether that's breaking man coverage or blocking. We don't know what areas they're going to struggle in, but I don't think it's going to be like the running back room, a dependable pepperoni pizza. If you're ordering pizza for a bunch of people, you probably don't order the Supreme, right? You probably don't go out on a limb here and order the Supreme. And in Penn State's case, you're probably not going to rely on the Supreme pizza to feed all the kids on the field trip. You know what I mean? You're probably not going to rely on the receivers to do that. Not that they can't be good; they can be fantastic at times, but you're probably not relying on them to get the job done.
Yeah, I went with Veggie Lover.
Veggie Lover. Why is that, Sean?
I like a Veggie Lover pizza, but kind of the same logic as you. There's some Veggie Lover pizzas that are awesome. Think of, would you prefer Pizza Hut or Domino's?
I'm a Domino's guy.
You're a Domino's guy. I like Domino's. Like if it's like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm gonna get me a Domino's pizza. I might prefer Pizza Hut in general, but I could live with Domino's. But I love Pizza Hut's Veggie Lover pizza. I mean, I know you probably look at me and you're like, yeah, you need more veggies. But, it kind of depends on where you get it from, because I'm sure some Veggie Lover pizzas, they just like throw big mushrooms on it and it's not going to be any good. But I'm optimistic this is going to be a Pizza Hut style Veggie Lover pizza.
My go-to pizza for a little bit was when I was in college. I'd eat it all myself. I'd get spinach, onion, and then pepperoni, and I have them square cut it, and I dip it in marinara sauce, and I eat the entire pizza myself.
That sounds really good.
Yeah. Anyway, you ready to talk tight ends?
Tight ends, let's do it. All right, so the tight end room. Obviously, we lose Brent Strange from last season, but I think we're gonna be ready to. I think we have guys that are gonna be able to step up, and I went with buffalo chicken style pizza. So, the reason I went with buffalo chicken style is similar to the pepperoni in that it's almost always really good to really good. Have I had some that weren't as good as others? Yes. Have I always been able to eat it? Absolutely. And I think that's going to be what you get from this tight end group. Theo, we all know his talent. We just had a guy who knows a little bit about tight ends, Adam Breneman, talk about Theo. He was the first guy that came up when I said under the radar guys he's looking at, and he acknowledged why he's not really under the radar. He's expecting him to take a step up this year. He had 20 catches last year, 3 touchdowns. Was coming back. He had the second most receptions on the team from a year ago. And I think he's going to have a bigger role this year. I could see him getting more involved in the red zone. Obviously, Strange is gone. So a lot of what Brent Strange was doing last season, that's going to fall to Theo. And I think we both love Brent Strange here. He has more raw talent than Brent Strange, in my opinion. I don't know if Cory would agree with me or not, but I think especially as a receiver, he could just do more. He's a little faster, he's a little longer. So I'm expecting a big year from Theo Johnson. Tyler Warren, obviously an excellent athlete, could go up and high point the ball, makes unbelievable catches. He had 10 catches last year. 3 of them were for touchdowns. So he's a red zone target. And then a tight end who just truly under the radar that we've consistently heard about, even last season when he didn't play a lot, but then into summer camp, Khalil Dinkins. And he didn't play a ton, but when we saw him, I always really liked what I saw from him. And I think he's going to be able to hold off the freshman and Jerry Cross to keep that third tight end job. So that could be an important part of this team, especially from a blocking perspective. Think T formation. How are they going to do that? I think you could see Khalil Dinkins fit in there. And, like I said, from a block, his blocking could be very valuable in this offense. Jerry Cross, he was injured last year. And I'm wondering how he's going to fit in to all this when he has Joey Schlaffer and Andrew Rapplier right behind him. So I think they're all battling for that third spot. I think Khalil Dinkins wins it. And then who's going to get the fourth spot? And are we going to be able to redshirt Schlaffer and Rapplier? I have a feeling Rapplier burns his red shirt. Just a gut feeling. I've heard some Freiermuth comps in terms of being ready to step in. But full disclosure, it's going to be a hard room to break into just because there's so much top-end talent. And if you remember, Freiermuth was coming in right after Gesicki left. So we needed a tight end, and thankfully we had Pat. So it could be tough to break in, but I could definitely see it happening.
Yeah, real quick, I'll touch on a couple of things. I had a Sicilian style pizza, so a tough crust, because I think these guys are pretty tough and they're be willing to go over the middle and catch some balls. About Theo Johnson, I'm just curious. Like, I gotta at least bring it up, right? Like, off the field issue there last spring. Is he going to be trouble as far as a game or so suspension? I don't think so. He just voted as a captain, but I am just want to make sure that's fine there. And then run blocking. Again, you brought it up already, but are they ready to run block as well as Brenton Strange did? Because the running game was really good for a lot of different reasons last year, but Brenton Strange does not get talked about enough. Ty Warren, I hope he can stay healthy. I think that's the biggest thing with Tyler Warren. Can he stay healthy? I'm also a big Khalil Dinkins fan. I think Khalil Dinkins is somebody you're going to have to talk to quite a bit and talk about quite a bit. So we'll have to wait and see kind of how much he gets to play. But I think, think about it this way. Ty Warren and Theo Johnson are gone next year. So Khalil Dinkins is going to be the guy next year. So I hope to see some flashes there. And then
Warren's gone?
Most likely. Yeah, he's been around for quite some time.
Yeah. He got there in 21, right?
I think he was there before 21. He played in 21.
Yeah, you might be right then.
Rapplier, I think they have to try to redshirt one of, if not both of them. Again, you get 5 games, including the bowl game. So you think you'd be able to, without pending injuries, you think you'd be able to now Rapplier might just show up and do whatever, but I'll be very curious to see how that ends up. Sean, am I sounding still funny?
You're sounding better.
Okay.
Yep.
No worries. So yeah, I had Sicilian there, but anyway, very excited to see. And remember, like the competition for tight end room, let's say Ty Warren and Theo Johnson both leave. You're talking about basically filling in 2 spots, right? You got to fill in the backup role and then that third guy. So there's a lot of opportunity here. I also, real quick, want to give a shout out to Mike Scatina on YouTube. He's been chatting along with us quite a bit. So thank you, Mike, for chatting on YouTube. Appreciate that. If you're watching, please make sure you've liked the video. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, let's go offensive line. This is an interesting one to me, offensive line. This is probably the hardest one I had coming up with a pizza type for. And maybe this is a little extreme, but I went with flatbread because sometimes it can break a little easy. And I hate to say it, but I have question marks regarding the health of the offensive line. Olu Fashion has been hurt multiple times in his career. We don't know the status of Landon Tangwall at the moment. Sal Wormley has been hurt in his career before. And Caden Wallace wasn't there for the Ohio State game, and you could argue was the reason, not it's Caden Wallace's fault that he got hurt, but without him playing, you could argue JTT doesn't have as big of a game if Wallace is in there. So I am a little bit concerned about the health of this team. I think this offensive line is fantastic. Let me just preface by saying that. I think they're fantastic. I think they can be really freaking good this year. You don't have this opportunity very often where you pretty much return 4 out of your 5 starters and your 5th guy played a bunch of football last year. Like, they are very fortunate to have the situation they're in. But can they stay healthy? Like I said, Landon Tangwall, fantastic. Friend of the pod. Bumps and bruises, but we haven't seen him for a couple of weeks now. Where's he at? Olu Fashanu, top 10 pick. I think he could possibly be a top 5 pick next year. But can we see him play at 12 games? That would be fantastic. And we need a lot when you're blindside of your new quarterback, Drew Allers, getting covered by Olu. So you want to see that there. Hunter Norzad moving over from left guard to center. Not too worried about this transition from what we've heard is maybe what we were in the spring. I think we're going to be okay there. I think he's taken that role pretty well. Haven't heard very much about Sal Wormley at all. We know he got a little bit bigger. We know he's really good at pulling. My only question about Sal Wormley, Sean, is can Sal Wormley show up in the big games? And this is probably not fair to him, but I think about the Michigan game on a 3rd and 1, and he got blown up on Penn State's first drive, and Nick Singleton had to bounce it outside and got swallowed. I think about the 4th and 1 early in the beginning of the 3rd quarter. Penn State moved it against Ohio State, got all the way to like the 35-yard line, went for it on 4th and 1, and defensive tackle for Ohio State was able to break through in Wormley's gap. Those kind of plays in those big moments. He's dominated against people he should dominate against. But can he step up on those 4th and 1s against the Ohio States, against the Michigans of the world? That's what I'm curious there. And then Sean, Caden Wallace. I'm a big Caden Wallace fan. I thought he played pretty well last year, but I thought the competition with Big Slab was good for him, right? I think Caden Wallace is ready to rock and roll. We thought maybe there'd be a right tackle competition with Drew Shelton, who's going to most likely just back up at the left tackle spot. There's no competition anymore. Caden Wallace has got that spot on lockdown because he's stepped up, and he's got bigger too. You've got some serious meat along the starters of this offensive line. So very excited about the starters. I think J.B. Nelson is an underrated guy, Sean. I think J.B. Nelson and Landon Tangwall are closer than the experts think. And then Vega Ione, we saw what he did in the Minnesota game. I think he is the next best thing in the interior. So very excited about those guys. I didn't even talk about the freshmen. I might let you do that, Sean.
It's funny. Like, I was just about to follow that up with the freshmen. Like, we had this awesome freshman offensive line class, and it's really night and day from where it was, 2 years ago, just as far as depth goes, in that we have Alex Berkmeyer here, who was 4 or 5 star recruit, depending on which service you looked at. Javen Williams was a 5-star recruit. Chimde Ono was here. And yeah, they didn't even make it onto our depth chart on the side there. That's how good we feel about those 8 guys. And really, you need 8 because the offensive line, it's a physical position. Guys get banged up. And like Cory highlighted, unfortunately, 4 of our 5 starters either are dealing with something right now or they've dealt with something in the past. I mean, the only knock on Olu is his injury history, and he hasn't played a ton. He's only played 9 or 10 games. And in order to be that top, I saw people talking about him being the first overall pick. And he's got to play 12 plus games to be able to be a top 5 pick. He just has to. I don't know what's up with Tangwall. Mark Brennan said that he wasn't at picture day on the Lions 247 pod. I don't know what that means. Franklin said he was dealing with bumps and bruises. We just hope that he's back for the start of the season. I hear what you're saying about Caden Wallace. I think he improved quite a bit last season. I was worried about that right tackle spot going into last year. Not so much this year, but there's, him and Sal Wormley. Let me say this. And Hunter Norzad. You could be good enough to do fine in the Big Ten. Like, to have a good offensive line in the Big Ten. But it's about being good enough to be able to beat the Michigans, the Ohio States of the world. And to do that, you got to be better than just good enough. You got to be better than, he's a starter in the Big Ten. Like, you have to be able to step up your game and say, no, I'm an offensive lineman on one of the best teams in college football, and I belong on that offensive line. And that's really what I want to see from Sal Wormley, from Hunter Norzad, from Caden Wallace. And if they can make that next step, then this is going to be an elite offensive line. It's going to go from a good to a really good one to an elite one. So if they could take that next step, then they could do that. Maybe JB Nelson comes in and unseats one of those guys. Maybe Vega Ione, maybe Drew Shelton. I think it seems pretty clear that Caden Wallace beat Drew Shelton out in camp, so I don't think that's going to happen. But maybe Nelson jumps in. Fine. I want to see them take that next step from being a good offensive line last year to sometimes a really good one to a great to elite one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the head, Sean. And I'm curious to see kind of how that occurs, right? And if that occurs. Let's go to the defense if you're ready.
Yep, D-line, right?
Yeah, defensive line. I grouped defensive line, defensive tackles, and defensive ends together for this.
Yep, I will take you through. All right, so we'll start I'll start with my pizza. I went with the Supreme Pizza for the defensive line. So I love a Supreme Pizza. Like Cory said, it does kind of depend on where you get it, but to me, to just a pizza lover like myself, any Supreme Pizza is good. I mean, are there some, like we were saying about the offensive line, are there some good ones, some elite ones? Yes, there are elite Supreme style pizzas. And I think this is going to be an elite one. I feel that good about the defensive line. Good friend of the program, Dave Wanstedt, actually said Penn State has the best defensive line in the Big Ten. Also former Dolphins head coach. Fun fact for you, as well as Pittsburgh's. And it starts with the ends. I don't know if there's a better rotation of the top three defensive ends in the country than Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, Denai Dennis Sutton. Chop, we all know about him last year. He had, going and getting 5 sacks and just being an absolute terror at all times. It felt like he could have had 12 sacks because he was around the quarterback so much. It felt like in some games, every single time he was rushing the quarterback, there was a hurry against certain teams. Adisa Isaac, now he played well against Auburn, but he was a bit hit or miss in the first part of the season. And I think it was just him getting his sea legs under him after having a torn Achilles from the season prior. So after he got going, he got going in November. And then I was really impressed with the way he played in the Rose Bowl as well. So expecting a big season from him. He was just named a team captain. So one of the things we were wondering about is who steps up as leaders on this team. And Adisa Isaac is one of those guys that stepped up. Denai Dennis Sutton, again, like I said, maybe the best backup defensive end in the country. 3 sacks last season. They were all early in the season, but he's one of those guys that even though he wasn't getting those sack numbers as the season went on, you could tell he was things were clicking for him more. He looked more and more comfortable out there. He had an interception and made a really athletic play on the interception. And I think that just highlights some of the things that he could do that are going to make him different in an elite way. And I don't know if he hits that elite level this year or not. I think he becomes at least a very good player this year. But could he find that next level this season? I really don't know that. And I don't think we'll know that until we see. Amin Vanover, we are the president and vice president of the Amin Vanover fan club. I mean, the guy's motor never stops. He's always just going after the quarterback. He's big and strong, and he maximizes everything he has every time he's out there. So I love Amin Vanover. I feel like that's just a great two deep. Then we'll move to I also want to talk about Zariah Fisher. He was coming off of injury last season. Played a little bit toward the end of the year. I don't remember him doing a whole lot, but again, he was coming off an injury. He was still getting his legs back under him, and I think it's good that he was able to get some game reps toward the end of the season. And with Smith Vilbert's injury, he's gonna have it's gonna just increase his role. So those are your 5 defensive ends. When we get to defensive tackle, Hakeem Beeman gained. Some people think.
Should I just give you a break from talking for a second and talk some DNs?
Yeah, go ahead. That works.
Oops, wrong way. Also, I just noticed. Do I sound better now all of a sudden? Because wasn't using my actual mic earlier. So that's great.
I've done that before. Yeah, you sound okay. Keep going.
Anyway, you just the defensive end. You're right. Like, they're fantastic. I think Chop Robinson doesn't get enough credit for what he does in the run game. I think he's actually a lot better than people think. I think he gets held a bunch as is. But is he ready to take over games? Is he ready to be like an All-American level? Like, he's already Big Ten level. Is he ready to be All-American? Excited to see what Deesa Isaac can do coming off of a full year from his injury. And then Denai Dennis Sutton, you're a 5-star. You did some good things last year. I think a lot of his sacks came earlier in the year. Is he ready to, really contribute from a full level? And then you mentioned Amin Vanover. Very excited about Amin Vanover. Can Amin Vanover give you 20-ish snaps, 20 to 25 snaps? Like, that'd be fantastic. So those are just my thoughts on the defensive ends. You brought up Zariah Fisher. And then I don't know what to expect real quick about the incoming guys, like Mapoye, Robinson, Jameel Lyons. I don't think you're going to see a bunch of them. I think they probably all fall into those 5-game window as far as redshirting, again, pending injuries. But I'm really excited to see where those guys are at from a development standpoint and where they're going to be. So with that, Sean, I'll let you get back to it. I will say that I had buffalo chicken for this because I thought it's dependable, but every once in a while it's a little spicy, right? Every once in a while you might get gouged because they're so interested in getting after the quarterback. They might give up a big run because sometimes they get out of their gaps because they want to get the TFLs, and that's just the way it is. With that being said, Sean, I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, I'm happy you talked about the freshmen too, because I'm not expecting anybody to burn their red shirt, but I think that just speaks to the health of the depth in the defensive end room. And like you said, they could play four games plus the bowl game, so I do think you'll see them a little bit. Then you get to defensive tackles. Hakeem Beeman, he gained up to 30 pounds in the offseason, and I think that's going to really help. I think that's going to help him. So the thing that made him, known was his speed, being fast in that interior. I do hope that he's able to keep that speed and also add the weight. And if that happens, I think he could be in for an awesome season. Then Zane Durant, he was on Bruce. We have two guys at defensive tackle who was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list. Also a guy that needed to get bigger, and he did. He's really built now. So I think he could be in for a bigger year. Again, similar to the Dennis Sutton, they both had moments last season, not to Abdul Carter level, but they both showed you some things to be excited about. He had an knack for getting in the backfield. I also thought he was good against the run. And anytime you could be able to rush the quarterback from that interior, using that speed to be able to get around those guards and center, you're gonna be a valuable part of that team. Other guy I wanted to talk about, Jordan Vandenberg. Feels like we've talked quite a bit about him in this offseason. I think for good reason. I believe he's over 300 pounds now, and I mean, if you saw his work in the weight room, I mean, he's just unbelievable. And he also has good athleticism. So he's been here for 2 years now, and I think this season you're going to get a heavy dose of Jordan Vandenberg. I'm not sure if he starts, but he's going to play a ton. And we all know Franklin likes playing a lot of defensive tackles. Then we got Keziah Izzard, who's probably going to start opposite of Hakeem Beamon. And, I kind of thought he was maybe the most consistent guy on the team last season. I don't remember if he was I think Drew Scruggs was my Mr. Reliable. But he was low-key a contender for me. And I think that's going to be what you get with him. You just know what you're getting. Again, stout against the run, could make plays happen in the backfield as well. And then Davon Townley, converted DN to defensive tackle. He went in the transfer portal for like a minute last year. Then he ended up coming back. Penn State's going to be playing him at D tackle. Already got a lot bigger. I mean, he was under 230 pounds when he first got on campus, and now he's between 200. I think he's 270 plus. So got a lot bigger. He's got that speed. I could see him contending to be, that fourth or fifth defensive tackle on the line. And then you got guys like, and then Caleb Artis is there as well, who was a pretty highly regarded defensive tackle out of high school 2 years ago. And Devon Ellis, who's been here a while, definitely knows his way around. I think his body type is most similar to PJ Mustafer's. And, we're going to miss, as much as we're going to miss PJ's veteran presence, we're going to miss him against the run too. And I think that's how Devon Ellis fits into this defensive tackle spot.
Good job, Sean. That was a lot, I feel like, for you to walk through. So fantastic job.
Thanks, man.
Big Jordan Vandenberg fan, but I did want to mention, I think Keziah Izzard is the guy to watch here. Can he stay healthy? We thought maybe he was banged up a little bit this spring. I think he has the best hands on the team as far as hand fighting goes. And so I think he can be the most disruptive in the run game. And we saw flashes of that last year. So I'm very excited. I think he could be a breakout player for Penn State this year. I think Beamon is already really good, and I think Izzard could be the next guy. After that, who knows, right, the lineup and how Deion Barnes is going to do things as far as Vandenberg, Durant. Artis, I really do like because he's a little bit bigger. But Devon Ellis played a bunch last year, and I think maybe Manny Diaz likes Devon Ellis because he's a little bit more flexible, and he can get out in space a little bit. He can stunt a little bit more. So we'll see kind of what happens there. But very interested to see kind of where the defensive tackle rotation ends up, because I really have no idea. I went, Buffalo Chicken Pizza. I already told you that. I guess I get linebackers, which is awesome. So for linebackers, I went with margarita pizzas. And the reason I went with margarita pizzas is people call margarita pizzas different things. And you don't really know exactly what a margarita pizza is. And I don't think we really know what the linebacking core is yet. And I know people are very excited about the depth and the opportunity at the linebacker spot, but I am still a little bit skeptical from a X's and O's schematic perspective if they are 100% ready. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to our predictions and our schedule breakdown. I think Abdul Carter is fantastic. I think he's one of the best and one of the best disruptors and havoc causers in college football. I think Curtis Jacobs is probably overall the best linebacker. I think a good comp to him is Brandon Bell because he played just like Brandon Bell. He played a bunch earlier in his career, and I think people kind of forgot about him a little bit. Curtis Jacobs still very, very good, and is going to be relied upon a bunch in this linebacking core because everyone else is still learning their roles. I know they've played a bunch, but they're still learning. Kobe King, Tyler Ellison in the middle. Here's a little bit why I think I'm a little bit unsure about the linebacking core at this point. Tyler Ellison, I feel like got to the right place more often than Kobe King, but he didn't always finish the job when he got there. And then Kobe King, I thought when he got there, finished the job, but he wasn't always where he was supposed to be. And so you kind of need a blend of both of them together. Tyler Ellison was a little banged up this spring, so Kobe King got a little bit more opportunity to perhaps take advantage of that. But you're going to need both of them to play a lot of football. You're going to need both of them. So hopefully both of them have improved. We've heard a lot of good things about Kobe King recently. And so we'll just have to wait and kind of see there. But I think it's important that the Mike linebacker position is airtight, especially when you're playing the Illinois, Iowas, and Michigans of the world, which, again, I'll talk about a little bit later. Sean, do you want to say anything before I get to the depth?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, everybody knows about Abdul Carter. He had, terrific year last year. I compared his stats to Micah Parsons. And I think this just goes to show you how good Micah was. Because, seeing both of them, I thought, Abdul Carter might have even been a little bit better. But, the stats, Micah had, 80-some tackles. And Abdul Carter, great freshman season. He had, I believe, 39 or 40. So, I mean, still a great year. But I'm wondering, how he takes that next step into, I think he was a star last year into being a superstar, getting to that Micah Parsons level. And I do think he has the athletic ability and work ethic to do it. Or to at least, Micah is an unbelievable athlete, but he definitely has the work ethic to be able to push that and to do what we need him to do to, get to where we want to be. Curtis Jacobs, he's the old man of the group. He has done it all. He has seen it all. He has been on good teams. He's been on a bad team. He's seen some mediocrity around him, but he's consistently gotten the job done. And he's a player who has, a lot of versatility. He's good against the pass. He was a good high school wide receiver, actually. And I think he's gonna. But a lot like Abdul, can he take that next step into being, potential all Big Ten, all American candidate? And I think he has that ability to do so. And now where I'm right with Cory, who's going to step up at that middle linebacker spot? It sounds like it's going to be Kobe King. But I'm wondering, are they going to kind of switch what they did last year in that they both kind of split time in the middle, but Elston played more, except they're going to split time in the middle again, but Kobe's going to play more. And that's kind of what it seems like going into the season. And I'm just wondering, will that middle be enough to get us over the top? And that's probably the only thing I'm worried about. That's gonna keep me up a little bit at night about the entire defensive unit.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I want to talk depth real quick. Dom DeLuca officially going to be wearing number 0 to honor the best, if you will, special teams player. For a little bit there, he was the takeaway king. He is no longer the takeaway king. I wanted to update everybody on who got the takeaway king, because that happened today. Daquan Hardy and Tony Rojas, who I'm going to get to in a second, were the takeaway kings. I want to mention Keon Wiley. I think he's forgotten about, and I don't really think he should be. Was banged up a little bit this time last year, so he didn't get to play a bunch early. But I thought he had a really good end of year and had a good Rose Bowl too. So I'm excited to see what Keon Wiley can do. He'll be at that Mike spot as well. And then Tony Rojas. And if you've been listening to the show for a while, we've spoke about Tony Rojas quite a bit. He flashed in the blue and white game. He seems to have the ability to be around the football, the nose to be around the football. Very excited about his future, and the fact that he's doing it in practice as well, as far as taking the ball away. That's a good sign to come. I think we all agree that Tony Ross is probably going to burn that red shirt and play a bunch. He's already competing with Dom DeLuca quite a bit to get some of that backup snaps. So very excited about Rojas. And then Tamir Robinson hadn't played football in quite some time because of an injury. We'll be at that Mike spot as well. I was actually pretty impressed for it, that being his first game back in the blue and white game. I thought he looked pretty good. Still trying to get up to speed. But I'm excited about what Tamir Robinson can do. I didn't have Kavion Keys on there because I couldn't fit him on there. But obviously very excited about Kavion Keys as well and what he can do. But I feel overall better about the linebackers than last year. I want to make that very clear. I just don't know if we know for sure where we're exactly at, Sean.
That's a perfect way to put it, yeah. I mean, last season, I really only felt good about Curtis Jacobs going into the year because you just didn't know what you're going to get from Abdul Carter. And no disrespect to Jonathan Sutherland, but, I mean, I don't think it's any secret that he didn't really set the world on fire on defense. Great special teamer, but wasn't a great linebacker. And then we had question marks in the middle, and those question marks ended up being justified in the middle. But now, I mean, you have to remember, Elston and King now have a year under their belt where they didn't going into last season. And the way you get better at football is just playing more football, getting reps, making mistakes. That's how you learn. And sometimes it sucks learning that way because you're going to look bad sometimes. But that's growth. I mean, it's like what Yoda said, the greatest teacher failure is. And that's 100% true. And then, you look at the freshman. I totally agree with you. I think Tony Rojas burns his red shirt. He's the one guy I know almost certainly, barring injury, is going to burn his red shirt this season. So expecting to see that. And yeah, and then that third middle linebacker spot, I think it's a true competition between Keon Wiley and Tamir Robinson. And I know we both liked Robinson quite a bit out of high school. And I curious to see who comes out in front there. And then my man Dom DeLuca, go buy a sauce, and he's gonna kind of take that Jonathan Sutherland role, except I like him better as a linebacker than Jonathan Sutherland. So, yeah, overall, I agree with Cory. Definitely feel better about the linebackers. Oh, I got to give you the pizza. What do I have? Spinach pizza. So, all right, safeties.
Safeties.
All right, so for safeties, I got play New York style. So the reason I went play New York style is you know what you're getting. And I don't know if there's anybody in that safety room that flashes, but it's going to be delicious and it's going to get the job done. So starters, we have listed 4. And I think that's for good reason. And it's because Keaton Ellis, I think you could pencil him in. He's going to play a lot. Been here a long time, a lot like Curtis Jacobs, seen a lot, played a lot. And I still think there's more we could get out of him. Franklin made it a point to say he could do more getting takeaways. He was an awesome high school wide receiver. So I think he's going to be looking to be more aggressive and trying to take the ball away. You got to fill the shoes of Jair Brown some way, and it's hard to replace the production you got from him. But you need everybody to kind of do their part, and they're relying on Keaton Ellis to do that. He's one of the guys that they sent to Indy as a team captain and as a team representative. So he's thought of highly in that locker room. And I think he's going to be able to take that next step. Zachy Wheatley, who was the turnover king last season. I liked what I saw from him last season, but I would like to see some more consistency. You could see why he earned that title last season of takeaway king in camp. He had an early takeaway. Again, he had a couple early takeaways during the season. One thing that stands out to me last year is against Ohio State. He nearly came down with the interception, and I just want to see him just go and get it this season. And so just consistency, getting more consistent in your habits. That's kind of the thing with him. But overall, I did like what I saw last year from him. KJ Winston, he's a guy we didn't see a ton of last season. I really liked him coming into this team, and he's going to put the hit stick on. You have to keep your head on a swivel when KJ Winston's on the field and you're going over the middle because he's going to light you up. And I'm not sure if he starts this season, but he's going to play. He's going to play a ton. Jalen Reed, he's a pretty proven commodity. They're going to put him down in the box a lot. He's got that big body. Another guy I'd like to see maybe get some more turnovers, and he's going to hit you. So really like what we saw from him. Tyrese Mills, guy that I feel like we don't talk a ton about, and we should. We should talk about more. Coming in from Lackawanna, he was injured last season. He actually moved around a little bit. He played some linebacker last summer or last spring. Now he's back at safety. Curious to see how he's going to factor in along with Mekhi Flowers. It's a crowded room, and I think there's a lot of talent between those two guys. And then, of course, King Mack. King Mack is another guy that wouldn't shock me if he burnt his red shirt, maybe on special teams, because he's so athletic and he's going to hit you. So if you could run, you could hit, you're going to have a role in special teams if James Franklin chooses to go that route. I'm not sure how much Jakari Nelson plays this season, but I think in the future, he's going to be a star. But I just think this is such a tough room to crack because there's so much in front of him. But nonetheless, remember I said it, Dakari Nelson's going to be a stud at Penn State.
Yeah, I think, those two guys are pretty different between King Mack and Dakari Nelson. So I think those both will be able to complement each other well at some point in their careers. I just want Keaton Ellis to make that step to being – the biggest thing about safeties to me is how do you replace the game-changing ability of Tig Brown? Because I think those four guys right there are fantastic guys, but who can make a difference? And I think Manny Diaz brought that up on Adam Breneman's podcast. Like, we talk about an almost interception during practice, but how often does an almost interception change the complexity of the game? Those four guys, how are they going to fill the production that Tig Brown's leaving behind? And Joey Porter Jr. for that matter. Zachy Wheatley has had a couple of those already, but I would like to see more from Keaton Ellis in that regard. And I think KJ Winston, honestly, from what I've seen right now, will eventually be known as the best of those four. I don't know if he'll be the best this year, but when it's all said and done, I think KJ Winston's going to be the best out of those. Honestly, I think Jalen Reed, I think he hits hard, but I think he honestly can tackle a little bit better. And so I'd like to see him improve on that this year. But I think Jalen Reed is also very athletic. And the nice thing about Jalen Reed is I think he's very versatile. I think he can play in a lot of different ways in a lot of different positions. So very excited about those guys. Mekhi Flowers is a guy that you brought up. I think he's somebody that, if not now, then when? And I'm excited to see what he can do. If he can get some more reps, get into like the 20, 30 count on actual defense. Be curious to see there. And then I have no idea what to expect from Tyrese Mills. So excited there as well. Okay, let's go corners, shall we? All righty, cornerback time. Kalen King, very good at football. My pizza for corners was roasted red peppers, simply because they're fire. I don't know any way to put it. I think these corners are really good. Not very often can you feel very good about your forward deep, and I do feel very good about the forward deep. Kalen King, very good at football. Is he ready to be facing the number one wide receiver every single time this year? Is he ready for a Marvin Harrison Jr.? And I'm curious if there's some things that we can maybe get a little bit better on as far as run support. But overall, I think he's pretty good at run support as well. Johnny Dixon, I think, is very underrated. Adam Breneman talked about maybe that was a question mark earlier, not so much a question mark now. So I feel better there as well. Sometimes a little bit grabby, and you can say the same thing for Daquan Hardy. So let's see if they can clean up the grabs a little bit. I think that's sometimes younger corners grab even when they don't need to. They're in the right position. They just grab just to grab. And I think that sometimes happens. They put themselves in the position to be successful. They just gotta make sure the official doesn't really see it. And then Daquan Hardy, I'm excited for Daquan Hardy. I thought he had maybe just an okay year last year. I think he's going to have a big year this year. Cam Miller was somebody that I was very much unsure of last year. And I've been told to basically not be concerned about it, that he's really turned it on this year. So I'm going to forget about some of the things I was concerned with as a true freshman, because I think he's going to come back and be a stud for Penn State this year. But I'll be honest with you, Sean, I'm very excited for Elliott Washington. I'm really excited to see what he can do. We saw him in his physicalness in the blue and white game, but I think he plays a lot of football for Penn State this year. And I've heard good things about Lamont Payne as well. And then O'Davian Collins is the transfer from Mississippi State. Excited about this cornerback room, Sean. Did we lose you, Sean? Oh, I think we lost Sean for a second. So let me just saw that he did that. Let me go to this. There we go. And we're still good for now. So Sean's going to reboot and hopefully get back with us in a second. But until then, I will keep it going. So excited to see where the corners are at, and kind of see where we can go from there. As he gets back into it, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the special teams, and hopefully Sean will be able to join us during the special teams talk. Biggest probably question mark right now, and I hate to say they're bad, but as far as pizza goes, I'm going with olives. Not a fan of olives, and at this moment, I'm not a fan of the unknown that is a special teams room. And so Alex Felkin's a transfer from Columbia. Xander Zahadak is the incumbent, if you will, but not really sure what to expect from either of them. Both of them have the leg talent. From what we've heard in camp so far, it's been the consistency. So which one of these guys is going to show enough consistency to get the nod? And then I'll be very curious how long their leash is once they decide to commit to a kicker. And hopefully that leash isn't needed at all, but that is something that at least needs to be thought of and considered. When it comes to the punters, same thing, right? Consistency. Just because you long punt is a complete shank. You mess up completely and have like a 30-yard punt every once in a while or a 10-yard punt every once in a while. When we're backed up, can you trust the punter to lay a bomb like Jordan Stout was able to do? Riley Thompson is a transfer from FAU. And then Alex Paqueta, who has long been acclaimed to have a great leg, just needs to kind of put it all together. So we'll see kind of where we're at during the season. But right now, we're not sure about kicker and we're not sure about punter. And if there's one thing to be unsure of right now about this team, it's special teams. And, you know, you think about the road games at Illinois, at Ohio State, at Maryland. You wouldn't want to think that special teams comes to play in maybe the Illinois or the Maryland game, but definitely the Ohio State game. Will we feel good about the kicking situation and the punting situation come later portion of the season? You'd think Penn State might be able to get through the Illinois and the Iowas without great special teams, but can you get through Ohio State? Can you get through a Michigan? Not as much worry about Michigan State now, but can you get through the Michigan State without great special teams? And we're just not sure yet. Think about what Jordan Stout was able to do in regards to touchbacks and flipping the field and how much that made a difference for his defense. Well, what happens if it's the complete polar opposite? What happens if we're putting the defense in poor situations or the offense is backed up all the time for a young quarterback? What does that mean for this team and how much does that affect it? So special teams plays a huge role here. The kicking and punting is definitely a concern. Thankfully, when it comes to returners, Nick Singleton is back. Nick Singleton had that kick return against Rutgers. Very explosive in the return game. That kick return against Rutgers was too easy. Wasn't even touched. And so wouldn't be surprised if you see another return by Nick Singleton this year. They also have Katron Allen back there in kick returning duties, which I think is actually kind of interesting. Not exactly what I would have expected. Just because I don't know if Katron Allen had that top end speed, but I know he has good vision. So I'll be curious to see what they would do with the kick returner spot. And then it looks like we do have Shawn back. Shawn, I briefly touched on.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I finished up on the corners and I moved over to special teams. Just mentioned Nick Singleton as a kick returner. Daquan Hardy, likely punt returner. We'll see if Caden Saunders can get involved in there as well. But I said, hey, olives is my pizza topping for special teams because not that I don't like the special teams group, but I don't like that I don't know what to think of the special teams group so far. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we have very similar logic on the special teams group. I went with steak and cheese pizza. So I've had steak and cheese pizzas that were awesome and special teams pizzas that just weren't at chief. And that's kind of what I'm expecting from the special teams group. I'm not saying they can't play. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. But I can't say I'm confident. And I would hate to see a season derailed by poor special teams. So it's on Stacey Collins and, of course, every buck stops with James Franklin to be able to come up with something. And up to these kickers, whether it's Alex Falcons, whether it's Sanders Sahadak, and same thing with the punters. I mean, I think we talked on the with Matty Fresh last week. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. About the punters and how a bad shank could really kill you. And we haven't had too many of those in the past, 7 years now. And that's because we were blessed to have Blake Gillikin. We were blessed to have Jordan Stout. And then we had Barney Amore. And I'm not saying those guys were perfect or they never did anything wrong, but there wasn't a ton to complain about with them. And I could probably count on one hand how many true shanks, like I'm talking like a 10 to 15 yard punt they had. I mean, they had punts that they'd like to have back, sure. but just like the true shank where you're just like, oh, that really screws us. And if you do that at the wrong time against Michigan or Ohio State, you're up 4, and you're late in the game, you're punting from your own 10-yard line. If you have a 15-yard punt, well, they're probably going to score a touchdown. I mean, that kills you, not helping your defense out. And then, from the return spot, I do think we'll be fine there because this team has plenty of athletes. They're going to be able to find a good kick returner. Interested to see what happens at punt return, because just because you could field kicks doesn't mean you could field punts. Punts are much harder just to find in the air. And then you have guys coming that they're right in your grill by the time you catch the ball. So there's a lot to think about. So curious to see what happens there. I would probably say they're going to stick with it. They're probably going to have singleton return kicks. And I know that makes some people nervous because you're exposing them to more hits, but in reality, it's a few more hits in a game. So I think there's a couple schools of thought on that, but I'd probably be okay with it. What do you think of that, Cory?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I mean, you just think about like a situation like Ohio State, right? If you have one good return on the road, that might make all the difference. You score a touchdown, that might make all the difference against Michigan. So you got to capitalize on those opportunities. I couldn't stand when they decided not to return certain kicks. I'm always like, send it, right? And
analytics.
The analytics might say starting 8 yards further back than a touchback hurts you more than say 8 yards forward. But I want to roll those dice because I believe Nick Singleton. I want to get my athlete as many touches as possible to do something special. And hopefully there isn't a bunch of kick returns. Hopefully there's only one kick return per game, and that's at the halftime or the start of the game. But those are free touches from some of my best players, and I want to give them a chance in space. I want everybody who's listening to the podcast to just take a second now. We've been speaking for quite some time now. Just take a pause if you need to, and just realize that we ran through the entire Penn State depth chart on this podcast. And although we're far into the show, we are not done by any stretch of the imagination. So we are going to talk about the schedule next. Again, we talked about all of these teams 3 at a time on the last couple episodes. So if you want a more in-depth look, please check out the last couple episodes. But we're going to talk about the schedule now, and then we're going to talk about the survey on Twitter. Then we'll get into our bold predictions, then we'll wrap up with the predictions. So that's the plan for the last second half, really like last quarter of the show. So thank you guys for being here, being live on YouTube. If you're live on YouTube, say what's up. And if you're listening, sure, subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. All righty. With that being said, Sean, do me a favor, move a little bit to your left if you can. There you go. Appreciate it.
That good?
Awesome. Oh yeah, it's great. Let's bring up the schedule and let's talk through this, Sean. I think the first thing, let's run through all of these. Let me just run through the schedule, and I want you to we'll alternate giving like one thing we think about this game or your mindset of this game at this time. And then we can maybe dissect a little bit more about what you'd want to see at this point, and then games that are more challenging, etc. So let's start. I'll start with West Virginia. I would like to see the defense flex their muscles. Garrett Green, quarterback for West Virginia, not great. A little bit of a wiggle as far as running ability. They have a bunch of new wide receivers, and including Devin Carter, who was supposed to come to Penn State that went there. Rodney Gallagher, of course. Sean correctly picked that his first game would be in Beaver Stadium. But I want to see the defense flex, right? I want to see the defense really show what they're going to be from the get-go. They're going to have a night crowd behind them in prime time. There's going to be a lot of optimism in the air. I would like to see the defense flex their muscles and really get after the quarterback and shut it down from a run defense perspective, because West Virginia is going to try to run the football. This will be a good early test. And honestly, West Virginia's got some good offensive linemen. Their center, Zach Frazier, one of the best centers in the world. So I want to see the defense really flex. Shawn, Delaware, what are your thoughts?
Joe Biden's home state. Yeah, nice beaches. Nah. I don't want to see a Villanova moment. So I don't want to see something like we saw against Villanova a couple of years ago where you're like, ooh, that looks bad. So get through that game. No injuries, obviously. And just you're feeling really good about everything. That's kind of my goal of that game.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking there too. At Illinois, I kind of put Aller time here. I think Illinois is going to try to take away the run. They're going to try to play a dirty football game, cover it in mud, if you will. And I think Drew Aller is going to have to do some things. That Illinois defense is really good last year. I know they've lost a lot in the secondary, and so I think that's a great opportunity for Drew Aller to attack the secondary and really see what they got. So this would be a good opportunity for Drew Aller on the road. I know he played at Purdue, but really first start on the road. Can he take care of business at Illinois? And real quick, they did announce Ole Miss former transfer Ole Miss quarterback Ultimer as their starter there. Shawn, 25 Iowa comes to town for the whiteout.
Yeah, I think I could sum it up with one word: revenge. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of blood in the water that night, and the fans are going to really want this one. The players that were there in 21 will really want it, and James Franklin too. I don't think there's any love lost between Kirk Ferentz and James Franklin. I think they've always had kind of an icy relationship, and I think it's surprising because Kirk Ferentz is just such a friendly individual. So I'm a little surprised by that. Yeah, blood in the water, and I think Penn State's going to, like you said, flex their muscles against West Virginia. I think they're going to flex a little bit against Iowa. I think Penn State's going to. I think that's a good opportunity to play a good team and really show what you got. And show that Iowa's not on our level. Like, we're done with the Iowas of the world, with the Wisconsins. Like, no, we are with Michigan and Ohio State. So to me, that has the chance to be a statement game for us.
Oh, I'm muted.
Yep.
Let me just say, I started recording this little clip, so I want to just restart real quick. Real quick. West Virginia, I want to see the defense flex. I want to see what they got. Stop the run game. Stop what is a pretty good offensive line, West Virginia. Shawn, Delaware.
Yeah. Joe Biden, beaches, and get through with no injuries. Get through and not have a Villanova moment where we're like, oh, we are not where we need to be because we can't even get one over at Villanova.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel that way about Delaware.
At Illinois, they lose a lot in their secondary. Let's see Drew Aller first road start in the Big Ten. Let's see him air it out a little bit. Shawn, Iowa, wide out.
Yeah, we're going to have some revenge on our mind. No love lost between James Franklin and Kirk Ferentz. Surprising because Kirk Ferentz is such a lovely guy. And, yeah, a chance for Penn State to really show that they're different than the rest of the Big Ten, and they belong in that same conversation with the Michigans and the Ohio States. They're on another level. It's a chance to show the entire country they're on another level from the Iowas and Wisconsins of the world.
At Northwestern, can't even make the Pat Fighting Fitzgerald's jokes anymore. I really don't know what to expect with this team. Just don't fall asleep too much. That's the only thing I can think of. We've got a bye week and then UMass, Sean.
Don Brown's mustache. That's the first thing that comes to mind. I hope he still has the stash when he comes here. I haven't seen him in a few years, so I assume he does. Similar thing to Delaware. I mean, except we have Ohio State coming up. It's after a bye week. So if there's anybody banged up, please don't rush them back. And I don't think they will. So good chance to recover. If we only beat them by 30 instead of 40, who cares? Just, again, avoid a really bad moment that really has us question what we have, and get through with no injuries, and don't risk anybody who's banged up playing.
At Ohio State, stop the run. They still haven't figured out who their quarterback's going to be yet, and unleash your pass rushing ability. 2 new offensive tackles for Ohio State, a fairly newish offensive line in general. Go after them. Get after the quarterback. Give yourself a chance to win there. Who's your daddy, Indiana? Sean, what you got?
Yeah, don't give them hope. Those guys usually always play hard for Tom Allen. Tom Allen, his teams are known for hanging around to the fourth quarter, playing against Penn State. They've done it against Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. They tend to punch above their weight. And I know they've had some tough years in the past 2 years, no doubt about it. They've really struggled. But they're still going to play hard. So get up on them early, kind of like we did last season, and just kind of put any thought of an upset away early, and then go and trick or treat later, because it's right before Halloween.
That's good. I honestly didn't remember that. At Maryland, I think this one's pretty simple, but we saw what happens when Talia gets pressure. I think they ended up with less than 100 yards last year against Maryland. I think it's important to get ahead early. Don't give them any chance, and then keep the pressure on Talia Tagovailoa. Number 2, Michigan, Sean. Big noon kick, stripe out. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's why you go to Penn State, right? And that's why you coach at Penn State. It's for these matchups. There's a chance that it could be a 1 versus 2 matchup, or 2 versus 3 matchup. And I think it starts with making J.J. McCarthy beat you, and containing Donovan Edwards, containing Blake Corum. I mean, they're, in my opinion, the best going into the year, the best duo in college football. Not letting them gash you like they did last season. Read your keys for the linebackers, stay in your gaps, let the crowd help you, and on the offensive side of the ball, sort of do what Michigan does in a way. Try to get a run going. We weren't able to do that last season, and help Drew Ryler out. So to me, I think that's got to be your formula.
Rutgers, low key, actually a pretty solid defense last year.
Yep.
Run the rock, take care of business. Again, you don't have to win that game by a bunch. Just take care of business. At Michigan State, in Ford Field, Sean, wrap up the season. What are your final thoughts on Michigan State?
Yeah, I don't believe this will be a very good Michigan State team, but they have athletes. They have guys that could beat you. Try to get up on them rather early. I know it's not in East Lansing, thankfully, but it's going to be in Detroit, so it's going to be, home crowd advantage Michigan State for sure. Don't be in a fog. So it's going to be a short week. It's going to be on a Friday. It's going to be on Black Friday. Don't sleepwalk. Don't play like you had way too much turkey the night before. And look, we could be playing for a lot that week. There could be a trip to Indy on the line. or maybe there's not, but there's still a trip to the playoff on the line. So just get the job done. Kind of similar to what you said about the Rutgers game. Just get it done.
Yeah, Christoph on YouTube says Michigan State can't use the weather machine this year, and that's a good point. Still
true.
don't really understand why they allowed that to happen, but anyway, thank you for commenting there, Christoph. Appreciate you, long-time listener. Okay, we've broken down every game roughly. Again, we talked about every single team already this year, and we'll talk about them more the week prior, obviously. Shawn, you look at the schedule as a whole, though, to me, and one thing I wanted to get back to that we actually were talking in our text group today about, more than last year, you have more opportunities for tests before you get to the Big Two in Ohio State and Michigan. And I think that is important. When you look at the schedule, West Virginia is going to try to run the football. I don't know if people really understand that. They were actually really successful, undefeated when they ran for over 200 yards last year. They're going to try to run for 200 yards this year. At Illinois, going to be a physical game out there, no question about it. Iowa, for a lot of different reasons, is going to be a physical game. But right off the bat, you've got potentially 3 physical games to really toughen up as a defense. You didn't really have that last year. Auburn had what was a good running back in Tank Bigsby, but really otherwise you didn't have much to toughen yourself up against. Your linebackers really weren't challenged. And I want to get back to my main point when I was talking about the linebackers earlier. People are worried about the Michigan game. And I still think it's more of a scheme than it was a size thing. I'll die on that hill. Well, the linebackers have 10 games, 10 weeks, really, including the bye, to prepare for the Michigan game. You really can't ask for much more time to figure out what you are as a team before then. And I think that's very important. I also think it's almost important that you get Michigan after Ohio State this year, and you get them at home. So I think overall, Shawn, the schedule really shapes up nicely for Penn State. I really like when you don't have just a walkover in game one. If you can win it, I think it's good to be challenged in week one. I think West Virginia will present some challenges, at least early on. And I love an early road game against somebody that doesn't have a good offense in Illinois. So I think there's a lot of benefits to the schedule. And then, of course, I just got to wrap up by saying, well, 2 things. Number one, it's awesome that we play Iowa for the whiteout, and I'm excited beyond probably anyone else because you know how I feel about that. But also, you've got at Northwestern, a bye, UMass to prepare for Ohio State. If the bye week isn't good to prepare, I don't know what it means to get basically 3 bye weeks. But you got a month to prepare for Ohio State. I don't know if that's good or bad, Shawn, but in most situations with most teams, you'd be very excited about how this lays out for Penn State. What are your thoughts, Shawn?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw the schedule, that was the first thing that stood out to me was this sets up nicely for us. And it's for a lot of the reasons that you highlighted. In September, is there anybody who strikes the fear of God in me? Not necessarily, but we play 3 teams that have an excellent chance for at least being bowl eligible. I think that's beneficial. I could see a world where West Virginia, Illinois, and Iowa all make a bowl for sure. We got to go to Illinois, and like you said, they're going to try to muddy it up. Aller's going to have to be able to make some throws, and he's going to be tested a bit. And then Northwestern, bye week, UMass. That's definitely the easy part of the schedule. Northwestern's not going to be very good this season. We all know the bye week bugaboos when it comes to James Franklin. I don't know why he has them, but they exist. And we have UMass after. So even if we're not great after the bye week, we play UMass, so we'll be most likely good enough to beat UMass. And then we play Ohio State. So to me, you have 3 weeks to get ready for Ohio State. And that's got to be beneficial. And then after that, Indiana, Maryland. I mean, we all know how much I make fun of Maryland, but, a little bit of a test before Michigan. We'll have to be sharp for sure. Indiana's probably not going to be very good. Then we play Michigan, and then we have kind of a soft landing the end of the season, in my mind, with Rutgers and Michigan State. So I really like the way I really like the way it shakes out for us. I don't like the years where we have no idea what we are until we play Michigan and Ohio State, and I don't think that's going to be the case this year.
Yeah, I love that point, Sean. That's a really good point. Everyone keeps talking about that Illinois game as a potential game to get tripped up. More concerned about that at Maryland game, to be honest with you, because, you know, I guess Penn State could theoretically have beat Ohio State, and then that Michigan game isn't as important. Like, yes, you want to win that game, but beating one of Ohio State, I think, takes the pressure off of you, because Michigan's gonna have to come back and play you and Ohio State at the end of the year. So they don't really know. They have all the pressure on them as far as winning one of the round robin of the big three. And Ohio State obviously has a loss already. So I think it takes the pressure off if you can beat Ohio State. But if you lose to Ohio State and then you got to prepare to beat Michigan, I think at Maryland becomes sneaky all of a sudden. So in a way, I think beating Ohio State, it sounds kind of silly, helps you not trip up against Maryland before you play Michigan, just because you'll have that. People will already get off your back as far as, oh, you never beat Ohio State, you never beat Michigan. That will be taken care of early, and you'll be the front runner in the division, regardless of what happens. So, be kind of interesting to see where it all kind of lands. But that Maryland game, and who knows, right, Sean? They might look good for the first month of the year and then be completely terrible by the time they play them. We'll just have to wait and see. Any final thoughts on the schedule before we wrap up the schedule portion?
Yeah, we're definitely playing Maryland at the time that, you know, the inevitable Maryland implosion happens. Right. So I don't know if we'll have to worry about them as much, but I mean, there's definitely an argument that could be made that you'd have to worry more about Maryland than Illinois. The reason I'd worry more about Illinois is and we've talked about this before, we're designed to beat teams like Maryland, you know, especially on the defensive side of the football. I don't necessarily know. It's not necessarily the case against teams like Illinois that are ground and pound. Now, it's not like we never beat a team like Illinois. That's just not true. James Franklin's never lost to Wisconsin, for example. And Wisconsin, pre-Luke Fickell, very physical football team all the time. So it's not like it's impossible, but that's probably why I would be a little bit more worried about Illinois. And I would just trust I would trust Brett Bielema a little bit more than Mike Locksley as a head coach.
Fair enough. All righty. Well, we can get to the survey portion of the show. I am not going to pull up the survey, but we asked you guys to complete the survey on Twitter. And here are the results of said survey. I think we got about 70 people, which definitely wasn't as many as last time, but that's okay. And so here are the results of said survey. And I'll read the question as well, if I can get to it. Survey was a little bit longer this year, too. Here we go. Had a couple more questions to add. Sean, I'm going to read the question, the answer, and then I'm going to ask for your opinion on it. Okay?
Yep.
All righty. Who will be the most impactful player on offense? Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Olu, or Keandre Lambert-Smith?
Yeah, I think in the year 2023, in 9 out of 10 offenses, quarterback's going to be most impactful. Now, impactful doesn't always mean the best, but I do think whether Drew Aller is a superstar, an elite quarterback, or whether he's a star or he's mediocre, that's going to have the biggest impact on offense and probably this whole team, is just what he's able to do. So I would go with the assumed starting quarterback, Drew Aller.
Yeah, that got 48.5% of the vote. Nick Singleton with 38%, Olu with 11.8%, Keandre Lambert-Smith with 1.5%. I tend to agree with you there. Next question. Who will be the most impactful player on defense? Sean?
Yeah, I got Abdul Carter. Or no. Never mind. No, I don't. Chop Robinson. You know, I think the 5 most important positions in modern football: quarterback, left tackle, number 1 receiver, defensive end, and lockdown corner. And on defense, I think defensive end is more important than having a lockdown corner. So Chop does a lot, just getting after the quarterback. Like you said, even in the run game, he's probably a little underrated in his ability to impact the run game. There were times last year where he just nearly sacked the quarterback and just missed him. And I think that changes this year. I think he has a chance to double his sack total. So he had 5.5 sacks last year. I could easily see double-digit sacks for him this season.
Chop got 35.3% of the vote. Abdul Carter got 48.5%. Kalen King got 13.2%. Tough question there.
Yeah.
Next question. Who will be the most impactful player on special teams? Running back Nick Singleton, punter, whether it's Paqueta or Thompson, or kickers Zahadak or Falcons. Sean, who'd you go with?
Well, I went with the plurality, and I went with Zahadak/Falcons. And it's because kickers, they put points up on the board, or they could cost you. If you have a drive where you get down to the 12-yard line, you're bummed if you have to kick a field goal, obviously, but you need those 3 points, or it's just a waste. And it's part of why I think time of possession could be a tad overrated, because if you have the ball for 5 or 6 minutes and you get down the field, you have to settle for a field goal, and you're like, all right, I got to settle for a field goal, and you get nothing from it. I think that's a huge boost to the opposing team, that you're able to hold the team to nothing. So I'd have to go with kicker here. But this is another one. I could see arguments definitely for Paqueta and Thompson, because punters are people too.
Punters are people. Zahadak Falcons won 39% of the vote. Nick Singleton at 30%, and then punters at 27.1%. Who will be the most impactful newcomer? Tony Rojas, Dante Cephas, Malik McClain, or running back Trey Potts, Sean?
Well, I went with the overwhelming majority and said Dante Cephas. I do think Dante Cephas starts this season. I could see him doing a lot in the slot. Again, sort of like a Mitchell Tinsley role on this team. He's going to get open. He's going to run good routes, and he's going to have good hands. And I do believe that, and I mean, the big question for him is, how is he going to adjust from going to the MAC, playing against lower competition on a weekly basis, to out of the Big Ten? And that's something we just won't see until the lights come on. But I have confidence he's going to be able to do it. I mean, if you catch 82 balls at any level, that's impressive. And to be able to run like him.
Yeah, he got 76.2% of the vote. Rojas at 16%. Malik McClain at 5%, and Trey Potts with 3.2%. What game are you most worried about? At Illinois, Iowa, at Ohio State, or Michigan, Sean?
Gonna go with Michigan. Michigan is a tough matchup for this team. Just looking at both teams, looking at what they do looking at what they do well versus what we do well, looking at what they potentially will struggle with versus what we will potentially struggle with. I think this is a tough matchup. Now, we're at home. That's a huge help, something that we didn't have last season. I am not as high on J.J. McCarthy as everybody else in the world seems to be. But, yeah, I mean, when you have 2 guys that could just gash you, it's a worry, especially if I don't trust our middle linebackers. So Yeah, I'd go with Michigan here.
Yeah, Michigan got 46% of the vote. At Ohio State got 30%. At Illinois got 20.6%, and Iowa got 3. I would actually go at Ohio State still. I think you got to find a, you haven't won out there for a long, long time. I really think playing at home helps with your offensive line and being able to mix up the snap count. I think that will do wonders for the offensive line against Michigan, and it will really hurt Michigan because they won't have that benefit to their own like they had it last year. So I would still go at Ohio State, but I totally understand why people went the other way. I'm going to pair these next two together. Penn State's pass offense will be blank in 2023, and Penn State's defense will be blank in 2023. Shawn?
Well, I voted that the pass offense will be better in 2023. I just think, and, our love for Sean Clifford, you guys know it. We had his back. I do think that Aller has more ability, more passing talent. And, yeah, I mean, the one thing that makes me a little nervous about my better answer, and it's probably the one that I feel the least good about, is the thing I worry about is the receivers. And we don't have anybody in this receiver room like a Parker Washington, who's a proven solid commodity. And I know you could, at Penn State specifically, and I know you could say Keandre Lambert-Smith, but I mean, when the second or third thing out of people's mouth with Keandre Lambert-Smith is his consistency, well, if he's going to be the number one receiver, that's a worry. Like, that's a concern. I will say better just because of Drew Aller's arm talent, but I'm even kind of wavering on that between better and sane.
Yeah, I would say the passing offense has a higher ceiling but a lower floor because we just don't know.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
I want to say the defense will be better.
Oh, right, defense too. Yeah, me too.
But they were pretty good last year, so we'll see. I think a lot will be dictated by linebacker play. More about linebacker play than defensive line play, which I think people don't think that way. I think a lot of people are like so fixated on defensive tackles right now. I would actually venture to say you would want to see linebacker play improve more than defensive tackle play. But that's just me. I will be happy / satisfied if Penn State goes blank in 2023. Shawn, you don't have to answer this because I don't want you to mess up your predictions.
Yeah.
77% went with 11-1, 10% with 12-0, and 13% with 10-2. I don't know if everybody really understood this question. This is supposed to be like, oh, I'm not going to really be upset if they did this. If they didn't go 12-0, if they went 11-1, you would still be upset with them. I think that's a little bit harsh, but whatever. It's Twitter.
We have some high expectations around these parts, Cory.
Yes, and then the next question was Penn State's record in 2023 will be what? So the first one was like, will I be okay with this? But what do I expect them to do? It was the second question. And 11-1 won with 76% of the vote. A little bit more with 10-2 at 15%. 9-3 and worse got 1.7% of the vote. If you remember last year, Shawn, these two questions actually differed quite a bit. So this is a little bit different this year as far as where everything's at. And just in general, the numbers are a lot higher. I mean, we're at 11-1 instead of a lot of people, I believe, chose 9-3 as the prediction for last year. So 2 additional wins on the schedule there. Yeah, I wasn't going to call you out. Shawn, sorry, I butchered that. The next one, who will win? If you haven't been here for a long time, we do the Hardy Award show at the end of the year. One of those awards is Mr. Dependable. Who will win basically the Mr. Dependable award? And Olu Fashanu got 42% of the vote, followed by Katron Allen at 28%, Theo Johnson at 15%, and Curtis Jacobs at 14%. So a pretty if this was a presidential campaign or maybe a congressional campaign, they would actually go and redo this and run again with just the top 2, right, Shawn? So it didn't get to 50%.
In some states, yes, they'd have a runoff. But yeah, I would go with the plurality here and go Olu Fashanu. The reason is, I mean, he might be the best left tackle in college football. And what more could you want from a dependable guy than being a cornerstone left tackle and just not worry about your quarterback, the quarterback's blind side. Blindside Michael Orr. Drums. Yeah. Not a good scene. But anyway, I'm going to go with Olu here.
Okay. Yeah. I think that was one of our harder questions, honestly.
Who would you go with?
I think Olu's a safe one, right? You got to take the left tackle, blindside, all that stuff. But Katron Allen, I could see that. If you didn't have Nick Singleton, I think Katron Allen wins that.
That's fair.
Who will win the Hardy Award? Again, if you're new here, Hardy is what we do at the end of the year, the Hardy Show for the best awards. The Jomo for the team's best assistant coach. I was actually kind of surprised by this, Sean. In blowout fashion, people expect Coach Manny Diaz, defensive coordinator, to win with 73% of the vote. Coach Yursich with 16%. Jaywan Sider, the running backs coach, got 10.7% of the vote. Nobody said other. So, which I thought was kind of surprising there. I have nothing against Coach Diaz, but I was just surprised that 73% with Diaz over Yursich. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I voted for Manny Diaz as well. God, Terry Smith is so underrated on the staff. I mean, his ability to recruit, his ability to develop. I could see a world where he becomes a head coach, never being a coordinator. Like, he's just that good at player development, that good with relationships, that good with recruiting. So I do want to give him kind of an honorable mention because I think he deserves that. But I'll go Manny Diaz. He changed the whole defense last season. Not that they were bad under Brent Pry, but just the whole identity is different now. And they play very similar to an SEC style defensively. So I'm going to go with Manny Diaz with a little bit of love there for our very own Terry Smith.
Yeah, that's a good point. Terry Smith definitely deserves some love there. Again, if you're new here, the Hardys are what we do at the end of the year. This question was, who will win the Hardy for Havoc, given to the player who causes the most havoc? Closer than experts think here. 43% of the vote going to Chop Robinson, 41% of the vote going to Abdul Carter, and denied Dennis Sutton with a sneaky 14%. I think Chop Robinson's the right choice because he caused a bunch of holding penalties as well as getting to the quarterback, causing sacks and hurries. But Abdul Carter's obviously done some really good things as well, Sean.
Yeah, no doubt. I think he could make a good argument for, frankly, any of the four guys. I'm expecting Adisa Isaac to take a step forward this year, being totally off the Achilles injury. I went with Chop just because, similar to what I said before, you could just make such an impact at that edge spot. And I'm expecting him to be able to make that. But, I mean, Abdul Carter is going to be all over the field this year. There's no question about it. And it's one of the reasons I'd be opposed to moving him inside is because he can create so much havoc and you give him room to roam on the outside. But I understand that denied Dennis Sutton love too, because he might end up being the best out of all four of these players.
Yeah, no. And I love Adisa Isaac, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
One more time, if you're new here, we do the Hardy Award show at the end of the year. Who will win the Hardy Award for the Samwise Gamgee given to the unsung hero of the team? Sean still hasn't watched Lord of the Rings yet, which is inexcusable because it was the homework for the entire offseason, and he let me down. The closest one by far, Caden Wallace, 16% of the vote. Tight end Tyler Warren, 29% of the vote. Keaton Ellis, safety, 20% of the vote. And taking it home, cornerback Johnny Dixon got 34.5% of the vote. Closest one by far, Sean.
Yeah, I voted for Caden Wallace. I think this offensive line, like we said, could it be an elite offensive line? could it get to that level? Like, and when I'm talking elite, I'm talking Georgia, I'm talking Michigan. And if it does, it's going to be because of guys like Hayden Wallace taking that next step and going from, being a solid player going into last season to being a good player going into this season to going up to that next level, being a great player, being an elite player. So if that happens, it's going to be because of guys like Hayden Wallace, and that's going to make a gigantic difference on this team.
And just so everybody knows that's listening to the podcast, I know I said the Hardy Award Show thing every time, but I clipped it as I went. And so if we post that on social media, we want everyone to know that every time. Otherwise, somebody's going to ask if it's like the Dundee. So that's why I did that. Just a two questions at the end. I always love these questions at the end. Do you listen to the Hardcore Penn State Football podcast? 38% no, but I will. So we're going to hold you to that. If you're listening, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
35% yes occasionally. 21.7% said yes every episode. And only 5% said no, I don't like podcasts. So excellent. And then I love this question because this is one of the last 2 years now. Did you retweet the first tweet in a thread so we can get a better statistic? Very close, 20% for all of these. But no, I'm selfish won with 27.9%. And I always love doing that one. That one always has dramatically less votes. Just to give you an idea, the poll before that got 60 votes. That one only got 43 votes. So 17 people just said, no, I'm not answering that.
There.
I always love doing that one. So anyway, that's the Twitter poll. Thank you guys if you contributed to those votes. It's always nice to have a bigger number. If you only have 10 people do it, it's all over the place. I think you get to 60, you feel a little bit better about those answers. Okay, Sean, how many bold predictions do you have?
I got 2.
Okay, good. I have 2 as well.
All right.
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
So bold prediction time. First one I have is something that we've discussed on the show before, and I'm just going to go ahead and call it my bold prediction. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton combined for over 30 combined touchdowns. That's what I'm going with. And you're smiling like you might have that as yours. But no,
I mentioned it earlier, but I have another one.
Okay, good. Yeah, I really think that could happen. And I think it's good to use these bold predictions as something that you actually would maybe put some money on. It's not easy. There's only a handful of running backs that did it themselves, but they were fairly close last year. And we expect them to maybe take a bigger role in the passing game this year. And so I think it's possible. So I'm going to go with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton combined over 30 touchdowns. And they don't have Sean Clifford to maybe take away some of the rushing touchdowns. So that's my first one.
Very good. Yeah, I also think that's going to happen. I think we're going to be more reliant on the run game than I think some people realize. People that think Drew Allar's just going to step in and be Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball 50 times a game. I just don't think that's going to happen. And I'm fine with that. I don't really want it to happen. My bold prediction is Olu-Fashanu, assuming health, is going to be a top 3 pick in the NFL draft, as well as an All-American. He's the most physically gifted offensive lineman I've ever seen at Penn State, and been watching for, not as long as some of you, but I've been watching for 20 plus years, and I've just never seen a guy that has his, build, his athletic ability, and his intelligence, and just being able to pull that all together. I mean, I think the sky's the limit for him. I think the guy could be a perennial Pro Bowler at the next level.
Sorry, I missed that completely. I got an email from Mike Poorman. They're going to do a Football Friday on campus, and Todd Blackledge is going to be the first Football Friday on September 1st. He's going to speak at the Carnegie area. So that's cool.
Dope. Yeah, he's calling the game, right, for NBC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sorry, I missed your prediction, so I need to write it down.
Oh, Olu-Fashanu will be a top 4 pick in the NFL draft and an All-American.
For those that had to listen twice, that's completely my fault.
Oh,
But I was like, I never get an email from him. I was like, this is super random. So, okay. My next bold prediction. Last year, I went with the defense having more turnovers than the previous year. This year, I say this defense accumulates 50 plus sacks, 50 or more sacks on the year. To give you kind of a barometer here, they had 42 last year. The most in college football last year would almost mean they got to be above like 3.5 sacks per game. So they're going to have to do some serious work. But I got Penn State getting 50 or more sacks this season. And I got to mention Louisville.
so it's not Louisville for sure.
No, 100% no.
Okay. All right. I said Keaton Ellis is going to have 5+ turnovers this year.
Wow.
5. So that means
Wait,
fumbles.
say that again for me. Say that again for me.
Keaton Ellis will have 5+ turnovers this year.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, they're
How many did he have
him.
last year?
I think 0. But
I think so too.
we're going bold. And I think they're going to need that. I think they're going to need somebody to step up. And I think it's going to be, the wily old vet. And we know he has the ability to do it. And I think he's going to get it done. I think he's going to hone in some of those receiver skills that we know he has. Maybe pick off 3 passes and then a forced fumble and maybe a fumble recovery here. So that gives you 5.
So, okay, so you're saying even a forced fumble that isn't necessarily recovered by Penn State, we're counting.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. I don't think that's easy, but I think that would be big time for this defense. That means this defense is probably healthy if Keaton Ellis gets 5 turnovers. That's a good one. That's a really good one. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to the end of the show. Time to drop our season predictions and forever be tied to them because we will never let each other down. Before we get to them, we just want to say thank you to you guys for listening. A lot of people sometimes tell us not to put these 2.5 hour plus shows on there. We like the preview show being all packaged together for you. Hopefully it gets you through this next week. And we'll be back to twice a week starting after the West Virginia game. I almost said Purdue. So we will be back Wednesday, and then we will be back the following Monday, and then we'll be going Monday, Wednesday. I don't know if we've 100% decided on 7 o'clock, Sean, but I think we almost should go to 7 o'clock because I think it's a little bit.
Cool with 7.
I think it's a little bit nicer. So let's just say Monday, Wednesday, 7 o'clock, starting basically the Monday after West Virginia. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for really making all this happen. And let us know what your season prediction is. Sean, I don't remember last year who went first, but I'll go first. I think I'll go first. How about that?
You have the floor.
Last year, Penn State did almost exactly what I thought they would do. Go 10-2, go to the Rose Bowl, but I thought they'd play USC instead they played Utah. I got my U schools mixed up. Don't think I'm going to be as exact this year. But I predict Penn State to go 11-1. I expect them. I'm not going to put the ambiguous they beat one of Ohio State or Michigan. I'm going to tell you that they beat Michigan this year and they lose to Ohio State on the road. And I understand they have a great opportunity to beat Ohio State on the road this year. Plenty of opportunity as far as time to prepare. Plenty of opportunity as far as their defensive line matching up with Penn State's defensive line matching up with Ohio State's offensive line. Ohio State potentially have a new quarterback. Going out there on the road until I see it, it's hard to believe it. Audrey Snyder told me last year, and I will believe this probably forever. If you think it's a toss-up, go with the home team. I think it's a toss-up. I'm going to go with the home team as of August 23rd and take Ohio State to beat Penn State. But I do think this Penn State team beats Michigan at home. for a lot of different reasons. Number one, being at home. Number two, I think the schematic problems will be shored up by the time they face Michigan this year. They'll have better film on Michigan than they had. Michigan hadn't played anybody yet leading up to that game. And I think they'll be able to take care of business, and they'll do more on offense than they did last year. So I do have them beating Michigan. I think the running game really carries them this year. I think Drew Aller does things at Illinois that helps you out. I think he does a lot of good things at Ohio State too. But I wouldn't be surprised if the young quarterback has a couple mistakes along the way. I go back to that linebacker growth over the season. I think by the time you get to November, when you face Michigan, when you face Michigan State and company, I think the linebackers are where they need to be to finish off the rest of the season. And so I have them going 11-1. I have them making the playoff. I don't have who they will play. I don't feel like I've got to the point of my knowledge across college football to know who will be there. I don't even know if that means at 11-1 they'll get to the Big Ten championship. I think it's a very trendy pick right now to have all three go 11-1 in the Big Ten East. And if that's the case, Penn State has the worst tiebreaker as far as Big Ten West likely odds for those teams' records. So I'm going to say that they don't make the Big Ten championship, but they do make the playoff, which I know is crazy, but that's my hunch. And I don't know exactly how that works. Maybe the Big Ten East champion loses in the Big Ten championship. I don't really know, but I think they get to the playoff, with their only loss being on the road to Ohio State.
So playoffs. That is exciting. That is exciting to think about. Let me say this. I thought your 10-2 last year was actually more unrealistic, to be honest with you, than this prediction. Partly because I had the same record prediction as you. I think Penn State goes 11-1. And I think they go 11-1 because the combination of talent, combination of depth, and the combination of this coaching staff, that gets you there. And it's going to carry the day against one of Ohio State or Michigan. I think Penn State beats Ohio State. I think they beat Ohio State because I like our matchups better with them. I think this defense is designed to give teams like Ohio State fits. I don't trust Ohio State's quarterback situation officially. I did, but Kyle McCord hasn't won the job yet. And Ryan Day just said that they took a straw poll, and I'm surprised he admitted this, and it was split 50-50 between Deborah Brown and Kyle McCord. That tells me they really are having a quarterback competition, not like ours, where everybody and their brother knows it's Drew Aller. So Michigan, I'm not saying it's impossible. I think you make good points. It's crazy they don't get tested until Veterans Day, but they don't. I think that could really hurt them against a team like Penn State, who's going to be looking to punch them in the mouth early. But I would go with the matchups that they have over Penn State slightly. I do think it's a very close game to the end, but Michigan ends up pulling it out, and we're left kind of sad, but not totally sad because we're not done. And I don't think we make the Big Ten championship game, only because we have Northwestern on the schedule. So if you're a Penn State fan, root for Northwestern every week because we need them to win. And if we could have Illinois and Iowa, who I do think 8 wins could definitely happen between the two of them, so that's 16 wins. If we could just get 4 wins out of Northwestern, that might be enough to be able to take us to the Big Ten championship game. Now, you mentioned you have us in the playoffs without going to the Big Ten championship game and winning the Big Ten championship. I think that's possible. The problem I could see us running into is I do think there's a very good chance there's that log jam at the top and there are 3 Big Ten teams. We are not the SEC. So I do not think 3 Big Ten teams get in. And I'm not sure how they're going to sort that out. But just knowing what I know about the way this all works, if Ohio State ends up beating Michigan but losing to us, but Michigan beats us, I think they both go and we don't. That's just my gut feeling. I don't know that for sure, and it could definitely be switched. Or maybe they decide to take all 3 of us. I don't know what it's going to look like. It's way too early to predict. It's way too early to say what's going to happen there. I think we go to the Orange Bowl and play Bama.
I think losing at Ohio State hurts you less than losing at home to Michigan. Because I would agree, in your scenario, losing at home to Michigan, I don't feel as confident. But if your only loss is on the road and you handle what would probably be at that point number 1, number 2 Michigan at home, I think you're sitting pretty. And that being said, we don't know what happens in the game, right? Ohio State, let's say Ohio State beats Penn State. They could beat Michigan, and then you don't have to worry about Michigan anymore being in the playoff contention. So a lot can happen there, but we don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
Ohio State could trip up against Notre Dame too, and then if they lose another one, they're out. They're not getting in.
Right. I do think it's interesting. We both don't have them tripping up against anybody. With a new quarterback, with lots of question marks at special teams, I guess I just want to ask you the percentage or the chance you think where there might be a slip. I'm not even asking you to pick where that would happen, but you made your prediction 11-1. I was thinking about going 10-2 again because I just don't know if there's going to be a slip up. I don't believe in the whole Franklin slip up thing. I don't think that's real. But you have new special teams and a new quarterback. I honestly think there's a solid 35% chance that they might slip up against somebody they shouldn't, because I just don't know.
Yeah, that's college football, right? I will say this. I don't think this Big Ten is particularly good outside of the top 3 teams. I think we're gonna have a great team this year. I really do. I think Michigan's gonna be great. I think Ohio State's gonna be great. But then it really falls off, in my opinion. I mean, Iowa could beat you, but we got the whiteout. If it was out at Kinnick, I'd be very afraid of that game. Very afraid. I'm not that afraid. I mean, Iowa could beat you. I had a whiteout. I think the only whiteout we ever had against Iowa, we lost. I was sitting there in the pouring rain as a 14-year-old and just a total buzzkill. But I don't think that happens this year. I don't think West Virginia beats us. I just don't think they have the horses to do it, especially on defense. If we were to lose one game, I will give you a game that I think it would be Illinois. So I think it would be Illinois because it's going to be the first game where Drew Aller probably faces a lot of adversity. And Brett Bielema, he could coach. I mean, he could find a way to really muddy the waters and then somehow just pull something out of his ass. And kind of like how Iowa does, Brett Bielema I fear he could do the same thing to us. I don't think it'll happen, but I'll probably go around the same percentage as you. I'd put it at about 25 to 30% that we get tripped up somewhere else along the way.
Gotcha. Not to end it on such a sour note, but I think it's just worth mentioning since we both went 11-1. And for the people that are new here, Shawn did go 9-3 last year, so don't just think that there's a bunch of homerism here.
No, I would tell you.
That's not the case. So there you have it. We kept it under 3 hours for everyone listening. I hope you really enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Adam Breneman. I hope you enjoyed talking about every player. You know, we're not a podcast that's trying to relate to everybody. We're trying to relate to, again, the hardcore Penn State football fans. And if you're listening to this, especially at this point in the show, that's you. So thank you for being here for the journey. If you're listening on podcasts, please subscribe wherever you're listening. If you're watching on YouTube, whether or not you're watching on podcast or YouTube, you should go on the YouTube channel and subscribe, because all of State Media's Penn State podcasts are going to be on this channel. So make sure you're subscribed. And so you can catch all the shows. Again, the Christian Ackenberg, Brandon Bell show is going to be coming up here in a little bit. And thank you so much for listening. We are 10 days away from Penn State football, and we will be back next week, probably with a special guest. And we'll be bringing back the pick'em, and we'll be in season mode. So thank you so much for surviving the off season with us. I feel like it went really quick, Shawn, and I'm really excited to get the season started.
Yep. Yeah, me too. I mean, I remember after the Rose Bowl, I just wanted the season to start like 2 weeks after, and it's been such a long wait, and I can't wait, guys. It's going to be a fun year. I have a really good feeling about this team.
We're going to have a fun time regardless of what the team does. I can promise you that. This
is true. Yeah, if we end up being disappointed, you can just hear us bitch. That's fun.
Exactly. Well, for Shawn, Kane, I'm Cory Lestochi. You've been listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Thank you, guys. See you next week.
Have a good night, everybody.